Hello everyone, welcome back to Ace Wisdom. They thought you'd break first. They thought you'd be the one to fold, to chase, to check their story, to leave the door cracked just enough for their ego to slide back in. But you didn't, and now you flipped the script. See, most people talk about no contact like it's a tactic to get someone back. But this series, this movement, this mindset, it's not about getting them back. It's about getting you back, and nothing makes an avoidant spiral more than seeing the version of you they never expected to meet, the version that doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't entertain breadcrumbs or second chances wrapped in manipulation. You became the plot twist. Let's get one thing straight right now. They didn't leave because you were weak. They left because your strength started making them feel exposed, uncomfortable, seen. So what did they do? They pulled away, went cold, played mind games, pushed you to a breaking point, and maybe, just maybe, you almost folded. But here you are, Volume 4, Episode 22. You've survived the emotional withdrawals, the silence, the sickening illusion that maybe they didn't care at all. But guess what? They do, and they're about to regret everything. To every loyal viewer who's been here since episode 21, I see you, I respect you, and if you're here for week 3, you've officially crossed into rare territory. Because this week, their mind games fail, yours begin. He who angers you, controls you. Epictetus. They used to know how to pull your strings. They knew which text would make you overthink for hours, which breadcrumb would reel you back in, which passive-aggressive post would make you spiral. But you've been doing the work. You've been studying the silence. You've been rebuilding not just your confidence, but your edge, and they can feel it. You're no longer reacting. You're observing, detached, focused, calculated. And that is what triggers the timeline of regret. Now let me be brutally honest, most people will never get to this point. They'll check their phone after 3 days of silence and break down. They'll make excuses, they'll re-enter the same cycle and call it love. But you've chosen the high road, you've chosen discomfort over desperation, you've chosen power over panic. And because of that, you're now in the position of ultimate leverage. Let me explain why this episode is not like the others you've seen. We're not talking theory here. We're talking real psychological shifts mapped across time. We'll break down exactly what's happening inside your avoidant ex's head on day 1, day 7, and day 21. This isn't some vague timeline. This is behavioral psychology, proven, patterned, predictable. And once you see it clearly, you'll never be on the back foot again. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Sun Tzu. Your avoidant ex is not a mystery. They're just a mirror, a reflection of every wound they never faced, every vulnerability they buried beneath charm, distance, and control. But the one thing they didn't expect? You learning the rules. You flipping the game, you staying silent, not out of weakness but discipline. Let me warn you though, this isn't for the emotionally lazy. This isn't for people still holding on to hope wrapped in fantasy. This is for the ones ready to weaponize their peace. For the ones who finally understand, silence is a message, distance is a boundary, not responding is a response. And if you watch this episode till the end, not only will you understand why your avoidant ex regrets losing you, you'll see exactly when the power dynamic starts to shift. And when it does, there's no going back. So if you're done guessing, if you're done wondering whether they care, or if you're just wasting your time, watch this video all the way through. Because I'm not just breaking down what's happening now, I'm giving you a map to everything that's about to happen next. And the first person to comment the secret mantra in key point 4, you're getting pinned. Let's see who's really listening. But before we dive deep, do this now. Subscribe to the channel. because we're only halfway through Volume 4. Like this video if you're done settling for breadcrumbs. Comment below the words, "Their silence is my strategy." Let that be your line in the sand, your declaration that you're done performing, done proving, done letting someone else's dysfunction define your self-worth. And if you're ready to go even deeper, join the channel membership now. Get exclusive breakdowns, members-only videos, and direct strategies for taking back full control of your emotions, your energy, and your future. Because at this point, this isn't about getting them back. This is about getting ahead. Let's begin. Avoidant X Regret Timeline. Day 1, Day 7, Day 21. And everything that flips in your favor at each point. Time to expose it all. Let's go. Stay focused. Day 1. The mask of indifference, but the confusion already started. Let's not sugarcoat it. Day 1 is when the avoidant acts like they're fine, but deep down, the cracks are already forming. They'll post something casually indifferent. They'll look calm, unbothered, maybe even flirtatious with someone new. And it's easy to think, damn, did they ever care at all? But here's the truth most people miss. Avoidants don't grieve in public. They grieve in silence. But only after they've convinced themselves they didn't need you in the first place. Day 1 isn't when they feel loss. It's when they start performing stability for themselves and for anyone watching. But inside, they're confused. Because you didn't chase. You didn't plead. You didn't panic. You didn't show up in their DMs or send some weak, open-ended, just checking in text. And that wasn't part of the script. See, avoidants expect emotional validation, even after a breakup. They expect you to come crawling, to prove they still matter, to try and earn back your place, even though they were the one who pushed you away. But your silence, it disrupts the narrative. And when that happens on day 1, their mind doesn't go to peace. It goes to chaos. Here's the psychology. Avoidants regulate their emotions by deactivating attachment, which means downplaying the connection, avoiding intimacy, and mentally rewriting history to protect themselves. But when you don't play your part, when you don't react how they needed you to, they don't get the emotional closure they were counting on. That void. It doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like confusion. Their brain goes, wait, wasn't I supposed to feel better than this? They were expecting post-breakup euphoria. Instead, they're met with a haunting, empty silence. No attention, no validation, no confirmation that they still have a hold on you. And while they might tell themselves, this is what I needed, there's a lingering whisper in the back of their mind. Why do I feel unsettled? Now this is where the danger kicks in. Instead of sitting with the discomfort, they'll double down on distractions. They'll post something fun. They'll talk to someone new. They'll pretend this breakup was a mutual decision, even if you know damn well it wasn't. It's all emotional self-preservation. But guess what? It's all built on denial, and denial has a time limit. Day 1 is not peace. It's posturing. A costume worn to convince you and themselves that they're in control. But the second you stay calm, the second you don't respond, the second you own your silence like it's strategy, they feel it. They don't say it. They don't show it. But they feel it. That eerie stillness that follows your absence. That's not relief. It's the slow, creeping realization. They're not coming back. And that thought is terrifying. Here's the brutal irony. Day 1 is the moment they're most confident you'll crack, but also the moment you start becoming unreachable. So remember this. If they can pretend to be okay, you can choose to actually be okay. Not out of spite, not to manipulate, but because peace is your new power move, and silence is your revenge. We're about to dig deeper into their crumbling defense mechanisms when their mind stops running from you and starts running toward you again. Let's keep going. Day 7, the curiosity phase. Why haven't they reached out? By day 7, they expected to see a text, a slip-up, a missed call, a sign that you cracked first. But there's nothing, just silence. And for the first time, it doesn't feel empowering. It feels weird, off, unnatural. Because let's be real, avoidants thrive on control. They feel safest when you're orbiting around their hot and cold energy. But by day 7, you've stopped orbiting. You've become your own planet, and they're no longer the gravitational center. So now, that carefully crafted story they told themselves, they were too much. They needed me too much. I had to leave. It starts to feel hollow, because if all of that were true, why the hell haven't you chased? Here's the shift. Day 1 was ego. Day 7, it's ego plus uncertainty. And uncertainty is what breaks avoidance. You see, avoidants hate not knowing where they stand. They'll pretend they don't care, but they always want a line back to you, just in case they ever need your validation again. That breadcrumb, that emotional hook, it's how they keep the upper hand. But when you go ghost with discipline, when your energy doesn't peek back in, not even a like or a story view, you steal their control. And when they lose control, they start monitoring you. They might not message you, but they're watching, checking your online status, peeking at your social circle, lurking from burner accounts, reading into what your silence might mean, not because they miss you yet, but because they're confused, curious, and shaken. To be uncertain is to be uncomfortable, but to be certain is to be ridiculous. Goethe avoidants built their entire emotional safety net around the certainty that you'd still be there, that you'd always be an option, that no matter how much distance they created, you'd still reach for them. But now that you've disappeared, they're forced to face the one question they're terrified to ask. Did I misjudge their attachment? Because if you really were too attached, where's the reaction? Where's the begging? Where's the pain they expected to see you spiral into? Now they're replaying old memories, reading between lines that don't exist, asking themselves, did I mean less than I thought? Did I overplay my hand? Are they seeing someone else? It's not guilt yet, not regret, but it's the opening scene, and it plays on loop in their mind. Why haven't they reached out? Now here's the dangerous part. They start poking, not full contact, not an apology, just small tests, a random view on your story, a meme sent out of nowhere, a vague comment on something from your past, or worse, complete silence, but indirect posts that are clearly meant for you. They want to see if you'll bite, because here's what they're really thinking. If they respond, I'm still in control. But if you stay silent, if you don't flinch, don't post emotionally, don't respond to the bait, that's when the curiosity turns into anxiety. By day 7, they haven't lost you physically, but they're starting to fear they've lost you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and that is what an avoidant cannot tolerate, losing someone who stopped needing them back. So what should you do? Nothing. Let their curiosity burn. Let the silence scream louder than any rant or regret post ever could. Because right now, you're not losing them. They're losing access to your energy. And your energy was the only thing that ever made them feel safe. You took it back. Day 21, the collapse. Wait, what if I actually lost them? 3 weeks, 21 days. That's the threshold where everything they've been repressing crashes through the surface. Because here's what you need to understand about avoidance. They don't process loss in real time. They suppress it, they postpone it, they numb it. But the pain doesn't disappear, it just delays. And when it finally lands, it hits like a truck. Day 1 was confusion, day 7 was curiosity. But day 21, it's collapse, because this is when their fantasy ends. The illusion that you'd eventually fold, that you'd probably send something, that you were just trying to prove a point, all of it dies in silence, and the avoidant brain, which was once calm, cocky and cold, now becomes chaotic, compulsive, and deeply conflicted. They start having intrusive thoughts like, wait, did I actually ruin it? What if they really moved on? Why does it feel like they left me now? That reversal of power, that psychological flip, it shakes them, because for the first time they're forced to look at the reality they tried so hard to deny. You're not waiting anymore, you're not hurting anymore, you're not reachable anymore, and that's when they stop asking passive questions and start spiraling into fear-driven scenarios. The spiral looks like this. They start stalking harder. They dig into your past posts. They analyze every emoji you drop. They look for signs, a new haircut, a new vibe, a new you. They start comparing you to anyone else they've ever dated, and no one compares. Because now, it's not just that you're gone, it's that you're glowing in your absence. That evolution you started in week 1, they can feel it now, and it terrifies them. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Anais Nin. Avoidants don't grieve your absence for who you are. They grieve it when they realize what they lost inside themselves. They didn't just lose a partner, they lost the mirror, the one that reflected back their potential, their comfort, their connection. They lost the version of themselves that felt safe with you, and when they realized they traded that for solitude, surface flings, or shallow control, the regret becomes unbearable. But here's the sick twist. They probably still won't reach out. Not yet. Why? Because their shame is stronger than their desire to reconnect. Their pride is louder than their pain. So instead, they suffer silently. They mask it. They post cryptic things. They fake confidence in public but unravel at night. They become haunted by the version of you they can't get back. The version who finally realized their worth. And every day you stay silent, that ghost grows louder. By day 21, they're not wondering if you'll reach out. They're wondering if it's already too late. They don't miss the relationship. They miss the control, the access, the comfort of knowing they still had a grip on your emotions. But now, that grip is gone, and your glow-up, your peace, your power, it's untouchable. So what do? Nothing. No message, no validation, no olive branch. Because right now, you're not punishing them. You're just no longer enabling them. And that's what true detachment looks like. After day 21, the boomerang phase, when everything they buried comes back to break them. After day 21, the silence isn't just noticed, it becomes unbearable. This is where the regret stops whispering and starts screaming, because by now it's no longer about curiosity. It's no longer about control. It's about consequences. Their avoidant fantasy, the idea that you'd just stay stuck in limbo, emotionally tethered to them forever, dead. That little emotional safety net they stitched together by breadcrumbing, posting strategically, or pretending they never cared, it rips apart, and what's left? Nothing. Nothing to distract them. No emotional leash to yank you back in. No power left to pull from your energy. You're just gone. And now they realize this wasn't a phase. This was a rebirth. Men are not afraid of things, but of how they view them. Epictetus. And when the avoidant X sees you with new energy, new boundaries, new discipline, they don't just feel fear, they feel exposure, because now they have to admit to themselves that you were solid, you were present, you were a version of love they weren't ready for, and worse, you became better without them, and that's the regret they can't process, because if they were the one who left, if they were the one who needed space, then how the hell are you the one who came out stronger? That emotional boomerang hits them like they're happier without me. They actually upgraded their life. I was never the prize. I just convinced myself I was. This is the stage where they start rewriting the story again, but this time not to protect their ego, but to protect themselves from guilt. Maybe the timing was off. Maybe I wasn't ready, but I still loved them. Maybe I need to reach out, eventually. But it's not clarity, it's crisis. Because now they're the one scanning social media for clues. Now they're the one hoping for a sign. Now they're the one trying to decode you. And the silence, it starts feeling like a punishment they never saw coming. Here's what usually happens next. They either try to reappear with a breadcrumb, a memory, a just checking in message to see if the door is still open, spiral inward, avoiding accountability, sabotaging new connections, comparing every new person to the one they thought they'd never lose. You go full ghost, not because they're over it, but because they can't face it, because the idea that they had something real and let it die, it haunts them. But here's the power move. You don't wait. You don't hope. You don't obsess over what they'll do next, because you've already won. Not because they regret it, but because you outgrew it. And by the time they circle back, you're no longer the same person they discarded. You've evolved, leveled up, detached. So here's the mantra for the ones who truly get it, the ones who didn't just watch this series, but lived it. I disappeared and became unforgettable. Drop that in the comments right now. Whoever comments it first, you're getting pinned. Because that line right there, it's not about revenge. It's not about games. It's about rebirth. They played the mind games. You played the long game. And now, checkmate. Let's move into the final message. You didn't just survive. You flipped the whole game. Let this sink in. You didn't block them. You didn't beg. You didn't burn bridges or scream your worth into the void. You simply vanished. And in that vanishing, you became unforgettable. While they tried to play it cool, you played it stoic. While they ran toward distraction, you ran toward discipline. While they performed for attention, you evolved in silence. And now, you're not chasing love, you're attracting it. Because by this point, day 21 and beyond, you're not asking, do they regret it? You're realizing, you don't even care. That's not ego, that's healing, that's power. The version of you they once had access to no longer exists. They played games. You built mastery. And here's the truth most people never accept. You don't need closure when your evolution is the closure. So if this episode shook something in you, if you're done waiting, done wondering, and ready to start winning without them, then week 4 is going to be your crown. Because next up is week 4, when you win without them. This is where the story shifts from them to you. No more timelines, no more emotional chess matches, no more decoding the avoidant mind. You've outgrown the loop, and now it's time to ascend. In week 4, we dive into how to glow up in ways they never saw coming, how to become the one who walks away without needing applause, and why the ultimate revenge is thriving in silence. Because the truth is, the moment you stop needing them to notice your growth is the moment they can't stop watching it. Don't miss it. Hit subscribe right now and turn on all notifications. Because if you thought this episode was powerful, week 4 is your coronation. And if you haven't joined the channel membership yet, now's the time. Link is in the description. You'll get exclusive content, deeper breakdowns, and direct strategies to level up your mind, your game, and your future. Comment below the secret mantra if you haven't already. I disappeared and became unforgettable. Let them wonder. Let them regret. Let them chase a ghost they'll never touch again. You're not playing to win them back. You're playing to never lose yourself again. See you in week 4, King. Let's finish this strong. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Ace Wisdom. They swore you'd wait. They counted on it. They bet their silence, their indifference, and their little mind games on the idea that you'd always be there. That no matter how long they disappeared, how many mixed signals they threw your way, you'd still be on standby, waiting, craving, hoping. But here's the twist they never saw coming. You didn't wait. You moved on. You didn't beg. You didn't chase. You didn't orbit around their cold detachment like some desperate satellite. You stood still, and then you walked away. And that's when their quiet little ego started screaming. The greatest act of strength is not clinging, but knowing when to let go. Epictetus. Welcome to week 4 of volume 4, When You Win Without Them. If you've made it this far through the mind games, the silence, the gaslighting, the inner chaos, you already know this isn't just healing, it's war. And you're winning. Before we jump into the episode, let me give a massive shout out to everyone who's been riding with us through week 3. Their mind games fail, yours begin. You've made it through the psychological trenches. Now it's time for the aftermath, the victory lap they never thought you'd take. This is volume 4, episode 23. 7 signs your avoidant ex thought you'd wait, but you moved on. Because let's be honest, avoidant exes are masters of false security. They act like they don't care. They push you away and pretend it doesn't affect them. They ghost and vanish like Houdini, thinking their absence will keep them in control. But they don't realize something deadly. Every time they disappear, you get stronger. Every time they go silent, you get clearer. Every time they act like you're replaceable, you remember your worth. And once you stop playing the emotional ping-pong game, once you stop texting just to check in, once you stop living in the gray area of almost and what if, they lose control completely. Psychology. Fact. Avoidants often assume exes will wait due to their perceived control in the relationship. But research shows avoidants experience the highest levels of regret and emotional distress when an ex moves on without warning. Let that sink in. They're not bothered because you're gone. They're bothered because you left without looking back, because they were counting on your weakness. They were counting on your fear of being alone. They thought you'd stay stuck in emotional purgatory, haunted by memories, scrolling old photos, second-guessing your every move. Instead, you evolved. You stopped reaching. You stopped waiting. You stopped needing them to feel you. And now, they're spiraling, silently. They're watching your glow up from the sidelines. They're lurking. They're pretending they don't care. But deep down, they're rattled. Because the version of you that would have begged for closure, gone, buried, reborn. This episode isn't about nostalgia. It's about exposing the 7 brutal signs your avoidant ex is silently freaking out because you didn't wait around like they expected. Some of these signs you've already seen, you just didn't realize what they meant. Others are so subtle you'd miss them if you weren't paying attention. But trust me, once you hear all 7, their fake calmness won't fool you anymore. By the end of this video, you'll stop wondering if they ever cared. You'll know they did. They just never thought they'd lose the upper hand. But this time, you held the silence longer than they did. And that silence, it wasn't a punishment. It was power. It was proof that their version of you, the needy one, the broken one, the one who waited, no longer exists. Power is not in how loud you are, it's in how silent you can stay when someone expects you to react. James Clear. So if you're ready to reclaim your peace, if you're done playing emotional hide-and-seek with someone who couldn't even text back consistently, if you've already moved on, or you're about to, and you just need confirmation that you're not crazy for finally choosing yourself, then you're in the right place. But listen closely, this isn't just content, it's a community. So if this hits home, do 3 things right now. Subscribe to the channel, because next week is the final week of Volume 4, and it's going to explode everything you thought you knew about avoidant regret. Smash the like button if you've ever been on the receiving end of a fake "I'm just not ready" speech. Join the channel membership for exclusive deep dives, early access, and bonus content that YouTube's algorithm doesn't want you to see. Membership link is in the description. And I want you to do one more thing. This is your personal declaration. Comment below this mantra. They expected me to wait, but I outgrew them. Say it with your chest. Say it like someone who doesn't beg anymore. Say it like someone who remembers who the hell they are, because they didn't break you, they built you without even knowing it. And if you watch till key point 4, I'll drop a secret mantra. The first person to comment it will get pinned. Now buckle up, because this isn't just the end of their illusion, it's the beginning of your rise. Let's get into it. Stay focused. Sign 1, they stayed silent, but still watched everything. At first, it looked like nothing. No texts, no calls, no, "Hey, just checking in." Just cold, calculated silence. But behind that silence, they were watching everything. The Instagram stories you didn't block them from, the TikToks you posted that seemed a little too confident, the way you started looking better, sounding stronger, moving different. They didn't like it, but they couldn't stop watching. And that's your first undeniable sign. They didn't reach out, because they were waiting to see you fall. See, avoidants don't handle silence like secure people do. They use it as bait. They think, if I ignore you long enough, you'll break first, you'll cave, you'll reach. But when you didn't, when you leaned into the silence instead of chasing them out of it, that's when the paranoia set in. Suddenly your confidence looked threatening, your peace looked disrespectful, your glow-up felt personal. Silence is only golden to those who think they're still in control. To those who've lost it, silence is a slow torture. Make no mistake, if they're an avoidant, they crave control, not closeness. They'd rather watch you from the shadows than admit they miss you to your face. So instead of texting you directly, they'll send a flying monkey. They'll accidentally like a post. They'll hover on your story within seconds of it going up. It's not an accident. It's not subtle. It's a sign, a huge one, because if they really didn't care, they wouldn't still be watching. They would have unfollowed, moved on, forgotten. But they didn't. And deep down they're hoping your silence is just temporary, that you're still soft inside, that maybe, just maybe, you're still hurting, but you're not. You're healing. You're winning. And they can't look away, because the person they thought would crumble didn't. You evolved in front of them. And now they have to live with the haunting truth. They're no longer the main character in your story, just a background watcher. Brace yourself, because that silent audience, it's about to start acting up. Sign 2, they tried to subtly re-enter, without owning what they did. They ghosted. They withdrew. They made you feel like you were too much, too emotional, too intense, too needy for just wanting consistency. And when you finally went quiet, they panicked. But instead of owning it, instead of saying, "I messed up," they came back with coward moves, the "Hey stranger" text, the random meme sent at 2 a.m., a song they accidentally shared, a reel they reacted to with a laughing emoji, like everything's cool. You know what that is? It's not curiosity, it's bait. They're fishing, not for reconciliation, but for reassurance. They want to know, do I still have access to you? Because here's what most people don't realize about avoidance. They don't circle back because they've changed. They circle back because they're uncomfortable watching you change without them. Some people don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves they had power over when you were still hurting. Unknown. And this right here is the game. They want emotional access without emotional responsibility. They don't want to say sorry. They don't want to explain. They just want to pick up where they left off, like nothing ever happened. Why? Because if they acknowledge the damage they did, they'd have to admit that they weren't the emotionally superior one all along. They'd have to admit that you outgrew them. So instead, they send a casual message. They laugh at your story. They comment something harmless on a post. Maybe even throw in, "Hope you're doing well." But the undertone is always the same. Are you still mine, even a little bit? And the second you don't respond, or worse, respond with boundaries, their ego fractures, because in their head you were supposed to wait, to stay open, to stay longing. But now you're busy, you've got options, you've got peace. And the fact that they have to knock now, instead of walk right in like they used to, that's eating them alive. They didn't expect you to evolve. They expected you to forgive and forget, without ever being asked to. But that version of you no longer exists. Sign 3. They started mimicking your energy. But it was too late. At first, they acted like they didn't care. They went cold, detached, distant. They gave you the same dry energy you begged them to stop giving when you were still trying to make it work. But now, suddenly they're spiritual, they're healing, they're working out, posting quotes, doing all the inner work. Or so it seems. Let me be clear, that's not growth. That's mirroring. That's mimicry. That's what happens when someone realizes they're losing grip, and they try to become what they think you want after you've already stopped wanting them. When the game is over, the loser studies the winner. Stoic principle. They watched you level up. They saw the shift. Your glow wasn't just physical, it was energetic. You started posting less, but meaning more. You looked peaceful, not performative. And without saying a word, you made it obvious. You don't need them to be whole anymore, so they tried to copy it. Suddenly they're quoting journaling books they've never read. They're meditating for likes. They're becoming what you used to beg them to be. Not because they want to evolve, but because they hate the version of you that no longer chases them. And here's the kicker. They don't want to grow. They want to compete. They want to look like they're ahead. They want to win the breakup. They want the validation you used to hand them freely back when you were soft, hopeful, and easy to impress. But now, you've outgrown the person you were when you met them, and they're scrambling to catch up to a standard they laughed at when you first introduced it. They see the glow-up, they feel the gap widening, and rather than apologize or reconnect with honesty, they're trying to replicate your evolution. But it's empty, it's reactive, it's too late, because they didn't respect your energy when they had it. And now that you've reclaimed it, they're just trying to match something they don't understand. They didn't think you'd rise without them. Now they're performing self-growth to look like they're not left behind. But trust this, real power doesn't chase. And what they're doing now isn't transformation, it's desperation in disguise. Sign 4. Their ego couldn't handle your indifference, so they tried to trigger you. This is where things get dark. When silence doesn't pull you back. When stalking your stories doesn't shake you. When their bait messages fall flat, they escalate. They'll post thirst traps. They'll flaunt someone new. They'll talk about how at peace they are, while simultaneously throwing shade you know is directed at you. But don't get it twisted. That's not confidence. That's a tantrum dressed as a flex. Because nothing bruises an avoidant ex more than your indifference. You weren't supposed to detach. You were supposed to beg. You were supposed to lose it when they moved on, or pretended to, but you didn't flinch, and that shook them. So now, they're not just watching from the shadows, they're trying to provoke a reaction. Some people don't want closure, they want control, and when they lose that, they create chaos. Modern stoicism. They'll start breadcrumbing again. They'll do just enough to stay in your head, but never enough to be honest. They're hoping you'll lash out, that you'll DM something emotional, that you'll post something angry, that you'll prove you're still attached. Because in their mind, attention, relevance, even if it's negative, and that's the trap they want you to fall into. But you're too focused, too evolved, too done. You've made peace with not having closure, because your clarity became your closure, and now that you're unbothered, they're undone. They'll call you cold, they'll act like you changed. They might even paint you as the avoidant now, but the truth is simple. You didn't change. You just stopped letting chaos disguise itself as love. So, here's what I want you to do. Right now, drop this secret mantra in the comments. Their triggers don't reach me anymore. If you've made it this far, you get it. And if you're the first to comment this mantra, I'll pin your comment. Say it loud. Say it for the version of you that used to overreact, overgive, and over-explain. That version of you is gone. And your indifference, that's the revenge they never saw coming. Sign 5. They told themselves you'd come back, until you didn't. This one cuts deep. See, avoidant exes are masters of delusion. They tell themselves it's not really over. They convince themselves that you'll fold eventually, that when the loneliness hits, you'll crawl back, that your silence is just a bluff. So they wait, not actively, passively. They don't chase, they don't reach, but they assume you'll be back, because in their mind, you're the safe one, the emotional one, the one who always comes back after they push you away. They believed your love was a faucet they could turn on any time, but this time, you cut off the water supply. You stopped checking on them, you stopped engaging, you stopped making them feel like the center of your world, because they never deserved that spot to begin with. And now, that silent confidence is driving them mad. Nothing causes panic in the emotionally avoidant like realizing the door they always assumed was open is locked. Stoic love principle. They thought time was on their side. They thought space would make you desperate. But instead of waiting, you reclaimed yourself. And here's where it hurts them. They never had a backup plan. Avoidants often don't form deep attachments, so they can't easily replace you. They may distract themselves, hook up, party, rebound, but none of it fills the void they swore didn't exist, because deep down they weren't expecting to miss you. They were expecting to manage you, to keep you emotionally invested without ever having to meet you halfway. But now they realize the brutal truth. You're gone, and you're not coming back. You didn't just move on, you upgraded. Your time, your energy, your presence, it's earned now. And when they finally circle back, when they test the waters, when they realize you've become a version of yourself that no longer wants the love they never gave, they'll break. Quietly. They won't show it, but it'll eat them from the inside. Because nothing haunts the avoidant more than this realization. You were serious. You left. You meant it. And you didn't need them to notice. You needed you to remember. And now that you have, they've lost their safety net. Forever. Sign 6. They started romanticizing the old you, the version that worshipped them. Here's the part they'll never admit. They miss you, but not you as you are now. They miss the old you, the version of you who waited for their texts, who softened your boundaries for their convenience, who twisted yourself into emotional knots just to avoid losing them. They don't miss the real you. They miss the version of you they had power over. So now they start replaying memories, not because they appreciate you, but because those memories are the last time they felt wanted without having to earn it. They romanticize your patience, your forgiveness, your willingness to believe their half-hearted excuses. They don't look back with regret. They look back with entitlement. Most people don't regret losing you. They regret losing the version of you who tolerated what they never should have given. Stoic insight. They'll start saying things like, "You used to be so understanding. You've changed. You didn't used to be like this." Damn right you didn't. You used to break your own heart just to keep them comfortable. You used to prioritize their emotional temperature over your own peace. You used to explain yourself like your emotions were a burden. But that version of you is dead and buried. You evolved. You grew a backbone. You stopped chasing clarity from people who gave you confusion on a silver platter. And now they're left longing for a version of you they no longer have access to, because that version of you no longer exists. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Avoidants don't fall in love with your wholeness. They fall in love with your willingness to make room for their emptiness. And once you stop doing that, once you stop shrinking just to keep the peace, they claim you've changed. But what they really mean is, you stopped serving my ego. Now they miss you. But only the broken, compromising, self-abandoning you. The evolved version, the one with boundaries, peace and standards, they don't know what to do with that. Because that version doesn't orbit them anymore. That version is free. Sign 7. They realized you became the person they can't reach anymore. At some point, it finally hits them. After the stories, the thirst traps, the fake glow-ups, the breadcrumb texts. After all the subtle attempts to keep you emotionally leashed, it clicks. You're not avoiding them. You're not angry. You're not even playing the game anymore. You've simply become untouchable, and that's when panic sets in. Not because they lost you, but because they lost access to the version of you that would have done anything to stay connected. That version who'd over-explain, over-apologize, overstay. Gone. Now they're dealing with someone they no longer recognize. Calm, focused, mysterious. You don't chase. You don't flinch. You don't fill the silence for their comfort anymore. And the sickest part? This version of you was always inside you. They just never thought they'd have to face it. You never lose people. You lose the illusion that they were ever worth keeping. Stoic breakthrough. See, you didn't just move on. You transformed. And real transformation is terrifying to the person who built a version of themselves around keeping you small. They wanted you predictable, emotional, available, because predictable people are controllable. But now, you're stoic. You're selective. You're not rushing to be understood. You're focused on being at peace. And that peace, it terrifies them. Because peace means detachment. Peace means you're not coming back. Peace means the bond is broken, not by drama, but by dignity. And there's no way to manipulate that. They scroll your page, hoping to see a sign you're still soft. They replay the good memories, hoping to feel relevant again. But now, you're no longer reachable in the way they once enjoyed. You don't respond out of habit. You don't miss what drained you. You don't revisit graves you already buried. They thought you'd wait. Instead, you evolved into someone so complete, so grounded, so damn free. They can't even reach you anymore. Not emotionally, not energetically, not spiritually. And that is the loss they never expected. Not because they loved you deeply, but because they never thought they'd be forgotten. So there you have it. 7 brutal signs your avoidant ex thought you'd sit still, stay soft, stay stuck. But instead, you moved different. You didn't just leave them behind. You left behind the version of yourself who tolerated them, and now they're haunted. By your silence, by your glow, by your indifference, because when someone expects you to stay weak and you evolve into a weaponized version of your healed self, they don't just lose a person, they lose their emotional leverage forever. And if this hit hard, don't keep this transformation to yourself. Subscribe right now, because we're entering the final stretch of Volume 4, and trust me, Episode 24 is going to shatter everything you thought you knew about the breakup. It's called The Breakup Wasn't Your Loss, but here's what your avoidant ex lost. Because let's be clear, they didn't move on, they didn't win, and they sure as hell didn't upgrade. They lost the rarest kind of love, the kind that understood them, waited for them, believed in them, until it didn't. In Episode 24, we're breaking down exactly what your avoidant ex lost when they fumbled you. Not the fantasy, not the filtered version, but you, in your realest, rawest, most ride-or-die form. And once you see the truth, you'll never grieve this breakup the same way again. So if you're ready to close this chapter with clarity, fire, and unshakable power, hit like, share this video, and most importantly, join the channel membership. If you're ready for deeper breakdowns you won't get anywhere else. Links in the description. And don't forget, if you haven't already, scroll up and comment the secret mantra from Key Point 4. Their triggers don't reach me anymore. First person to drop it gets pinned. This isn't about revenge. It's not about winning the breakup. It's about becoming so healed, so grounded, so untouchable, that what once broke you bows before you. See you in Episode 24. We're not done yet. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Ace Wisdom. Week 4, When You Win Without Them, Volume 4, Episode 24. They didn't leave you. They lost you. And there's a massive difference. That avoidant ex you still think about late at night? They didn't walk away because you weren't enough. They walked away because they were too emotionally stunted to handle someone who was. They weren't ready. Not for the truth. Not for intimacy. Not for consistency. Not for you. They told themselves the story that you wanted too much, when deep down they knew they were offering too little. And the worst part, they thought walking away would make them feel powerful, that detaching would give them control, that you'd break, fall apart, chase. But you didn't. You rallied. You reset. You chose discipline over drama, healing over humiliation. You didn't lose them. You survived them. And that's the difference between people who bend and people who build. Let's get this clear. The breakup, it wasn't your loss, it was your catalyst, because nothing exposes a person's emotional poverty like watching you thrive without them. And that's what today's episode is about. Welcome to Week 4, When You Win Without Them. This is Volume 4, Episode 24, and if you've been riding with me all the way from Week 1 to Week 3, first of all, thank you. You're not just watching these videos, you're walking through the fire with purpose. You're shedding illusions, building emotional muscle, and becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs external validation to feel whole. In Week 3, we explored the storm of confusion that hits when you start pulling away, how your absence turns into their obsession. But now, we go deeper, because Week 4 isn't about waiting on closure, it's about becoming the closure. And this episode, the breakup wasn't your loss. But here's what your avoidant ex lost, is your personal reckoning. If you stay with me till the end, I'm going to walk you through exactly what your avoidant ex gave up when they fumbled you. We'll unpack the 5 irreplaceable things they lost, the kind of things no rebound, no distraction, no situationship can ever truly replace. And trust me, it's going to hit. Now listen. Most people walk away from breakups thinking they did something wrong. They obsess, they overthink, they rewrite every moment, trying to pinpoint the second they became too much or not enough. But what if I told you the truth was neither? You didn't mess up. You just outgrew someone who wasn't ready for your capacity. Your presence was too rich for their appetite. They couldn't digest someone who offered real intimacy when all they knew was emotional rationing. Let's look at this through a Stoic lens. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." You were the wealth, the peace, the stability, the rare one who didn't just want love, but knew how to give it. But avoidants don't operate in reality. They live in survival mode, where closeness feels threatening and detachment feels safe. They don't run because you were wrong for them. They run because you were too right. And now, they're waking up to a cold bed, a phone that doesn't light up, a silence that used to feel like freedom, but now sounds a lot like regret. Let's be brutally honest. They lost someone who loved them despite the chaos, despite the cold responses, despite the inconsistency, despite the way they weaponized distance as power. And you gave them patience. You gave them grace. You gave them time. They gave you breadcrumbs, excuses, empty space dressed up as needing to figure things out. But here's the plot twist. You did figure things out. You figured out that love without effort is manipulation, that silence isn't peace, it's punishment, and that someone who avoids their own feelings can never hold yours. So if you're sitting here wondering, did I matter? Do they even care? Did they ever love me? Let me answer that for you. Yes, you mattered, yes, they cared, and yes, they loved you, in the only way they knew how, but their version of love wasn't sustainable. It was survival dressed as connection. It was self-protection masquerading as detachment, and you outgrew that. So today, I'm not here to tell you what you lost. I'm here to remind you of what they'll never get back, because healing isn't just about moving on. It's about waking up one day and realizing they lost the best thing they never even knew how to hold. So here's what I want you to do. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. Week 4 is the final round, and you're going to want to be locked in for every episode coming up. The clarity, the confidence, the closure, it's all loading. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Join the channel membership if you want access to exclusive deep dives, unfiltered strategies, and bonus videos I only drop for members. That link is right there in the video description. And now, here's your CTA for this episode. Drop this mantra in the comments. They lost peace when they lost me. Type it with power. Type it with certainty. Not for them, but for you. And when we get to key point 4, I've got a secret mantra waiting. The first person to comment it down there will get pinned. Let's go, because the real loss wasn't yours, it was theirs. And now, we're about to break down why. Stay focused. Key point 1. They lost their emotional safe space, but they won't admit it. Avoidant exes love to act like you were a burden. Too intense, too emotional, too clingy. But let's tell the truth they'll never say out loud. You were their calm in the chaos, their emotional anchor, their unspoken sanctuary, the one person who held space for everything they were too scared to face alone. And now, it's gone, snatched, cut off. They thought detaching would give them peace, but what they didn't realize was, your presence was the peace. See, here's the irony with avoidance. They crave connection, but fear intimacy. They want love, but flinch at vulnerability. So when someone like you shows up, open, honest, emotionally available, they get overwhelmed. Not because you're too much, but because they're too underdeveloped. Psychologist Amir Levine once said, "Avoidants are often attracted to people who bring them closer to intimacy than they've ever been before. But when it actually happens, they panic." That's exactly what happened here. They panicked. They mistook safety for pressure, closeness for control, your softness for smothering. But now that you've stepped away, now that you've stopped over-explaining yourself, stopped chasing, stopped pouring into someone with a leaking cup, They're feeling that emotional drought hard, late at night, when the noise dies down, when no one's texting, when the old distractions don't hit the same. That's when it creeps in, the ache for you. Not just your touch, but your presence, your patience, your loyalty, your way of making them feel like they were allowed to be human. They lost the one person who didn't shame their flaws, who saw the little boy or little girl behind all that emotional armor, who gave them grace without expectation, but they'll never admit it. They'll keep posting, keep smiling, keep pretending like you were just a phase. But behind all that fake indifference is someone starving for the comfort they now realize was never guaranteed. So remember this, you weren't too much. You were just too healing for someone who was addicted to their wounds. You weren't intense, you were consistent in a world full of avoidant chaos. And now, their little world of distance, control, and I need space has collapsed under the weight of your absence. They lost their emotional safety net, and they won't find another one like it. Let's move to key point 2. Key point 2. They lost the one person who never made them earn love. Let's cut through the noise. Most people only love avoidance until it gets hard, until they shut down, until they pull away, until they start with the disappearing acts and cold indifference. But you stayed. You didn't just fall in love with the version of them that was sweet, funny, and charming. You showed up even when they ghosted you emotionally, even when the room felt cold, even when they acted like they didn't need anyone. And that was rare, because here's what avoidance don't realize until it's too late. Most people stop loving them the moment they stop performing. But you loved them through the shutdowns, through the distance, through the defensive walls they thought would protect them, but really just pushed love away. You were unconditional in a world that only gave them love when they were being good. That's what they lost. And here's the twist. They'll go out there chasing validation from people who only love them for their looks, their money, their mask. But none of those people will ever love them like you did. Love that wasn't a reward. Love that didn't keep score. Love that said, you don't have to earn this, you just have to show up. And now that you're gone, the difference hurts. They feel it every time they try to connect with someone new, only to realize that connection is transactional, conditional, surface level. Because you were depth, you were presence, you were the kind of love that looked at their wounds and didn't flinch. Let's be clear, you saw them, all of them, and still said, I'm not leaving, and still, they left you. That's what makes this their greatest loss. Because love like yours, it's not on every corner, it's not waiting in another situationship, it's not going to be copied and pasted into the next person they trauma bond with. They lost the one person who offered love with open hands, not with ultimatums. The one who understood their triggers but didn't weaponize them. The one who said, I'll hold you down, even when they couldn't explain why they kept pushing you away. And now they're back in the world they thought they missed. And suddenly it feels cold, transactional, hollow. So no, you didn't lose someone who was emotionally unavailable. They lost someone who was emotionally present and still willing to stay. They're going to realize it too, not through some grand epiphany, but in the quiet. When they meet someone new and it just doesn't click, when the new energy feels like effort, when they realize, damn, that love I had, that was real, but it'll be too late. Let's keep going. Key point 3. They lost the one person who made them feel seen. Without performing avoidance, don't want love. They want acceptance, but they've been conditioned to believe they have to earn it. They think they have to be charming, aloof, successful, desired, admired, just to be safe from rejection. So what happens when they meet someone like you, someone who doesn't need the mask, who sees through the act, Who makes them feel valued even when they're not performing? They panic, they sabotage, they run. Because when you're used to performing for love, being seen without earning it feels exposed. See, what most people don't understand about avoidance is this. It's not that they don't feel deeply, it's that they hide deeply. Behind sarcasm, behind "I'm fine", behind detachment and distractions. But you cracked the code. You spotted the subtle shifts in tone. You noticed when their smile didn't reach their eyes. You read them, even when they said nothing. You didn't just listen, you understood. And that scared the hell out of them. Because once someone sees you, you can't pretend anymore. You can't hide behind coolness or emotional distance or the "I'm unbothered" performance. To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved, that's what we long for. Timothy Keller. You gave them exactly that. You didn't love their highlight reel. You loved the raw version, the confused, inconsistent, emotionally avoidant version. And now, they've gone back into hiding, back into the shallow end of connection, back to relationships where no one sees past their curated image. But here's the thing. Once someone has felt real intimacy, even just for a moment, fake becomes unbearable. They lost the one person who saw their soul without judgment, who didn't demand perfection, who didn't need performance. And no matter who they meet next, there will always be a gap, a disconnect, a hollow space where you used to exist, because you didn't just date them. You witnessed them. And now that you're gone, they're surrounded by people who only see the surface, who don't ask the deeper questions, who don't get them. They're realizing the difference between being admired and being understood, and they lost the one person who gave them both. Get ready. Key point 4 is where we drop the secret mantra. Let's go. Key point 4, they lost their emotional power over you, and that's driving them crazy. Let's get one thing straight. Your avoidant ex wasn't just keeping distance for their sake. They were doing it to control the emotional dynamic. Because when someone fears vulnerability, the only way they feel safe is by keeping the upper hand, by making you feel like the one who wants more, like the one who's chasing, like the one who's emotionally weaker. It's subtle, but deadly. They didn't respond quickly, so you were left anxious. They pulled away, so you had to reach out. They kept things vague, so you had to guess where you stood. That was their game. And they were winning, until you stopped playing. Let's talk psychology for a second. Avoidants are wired to feel overwhelmed by intimacy, but they also get a secret sense of control when they know you're more emotionally invested than they are. That's how they keep the power, by staying just distant enough to keep you insecure, but close enough to stop you from walking away. But guess what? You walked anyway. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped checking in. You stopped performing for someone who couldn't even name their own emotions. And in doing so, you flipped the script. Now they're the one overthinking. They're the one wondering if you've moved on. They're the one checking your profile at midnight, scrolling through your stories, wondering who that glow is for. You reclaimed your emotional authority, and that loss, it burns them in silence, because they can't control what they can't reach, and they can't forget what they couldn't fully possess. You are now the unanswered question, the what if they can't shake, the one that got wiser instead of weaker. And that's what makes this your power move. Not begging, not posting quotes, not trying to make them jealous, but simply becoming unavailable to the same cycles they used to trap you in. So, if you're ready to seal this transformation, here's the secret mantra. You can't lose control of what you no longer hold. First person to drop that word for word in the comments gets pinned. Say it with your chest, not for revenge, but for release. because once you reclaim your peace, you stop being someone they can manage emotionally and become someone they can only miss. Let's take it home. Key point 5 is next. Let's finish strong. Key point 5. They lost the future. They secretly wanted, but were too scared to build. Let's end this with a truth bomb. Your avoidant ex didn't just walk away from you. They walked away from everything that could have been. The long nights, the soft mornings, the inside jokes, the shared goals, the calm life you were quietly offering, the emotional wealth most people spend decades trying to find. They lost the long game. Here's what avoidants never tell you. They do fantasize about a future, a stable relationship, kids, a home, peace, a partner that just gets them. But when it starts to feel real, when the bond deepens and the guard starts to slip, fear takes the wheel. Fear of losing their independence, fear of being hurt first, fear of being seen, loved, and left later. So instead of choosing courage, they choose comfort. Comfort in detachment, comfort in old patterns, comfort in chasing people they don't actually have to build with, because that feels safer. Most avoidants don't fear love. They fear being known, then abandoned. Modern attachment theory. So what did they lose? They lost the rare shot at building real intimacy with someone who wasn't there to control them, fix them, or manipulate them, but to grow with them. You were that mirror. You weren't asking for perfect. You were asking for effort, for maturity, for a connection built on truth, not performance. And now they're surrounded by short-term flings, transactional attention, and surface-level admiration from people who will never match what they just let go of. You weren't just the one who loved them. You were the one who understood the vision, even when they couldn't articulate it themselves. You were the blueprint, and now they've lost that future, the one they secretly wanted but didn't feel worthy of, the one they could have had if they'd only leaned in instead of pulling away. But it's too late now. You've evolved. You've upgraded. You've become the kind of person who doesn't chase potential. You attract alignment. And they're stuck romanticizing a future they destroyed with fear. So let's recap what they truly lost. An emotional safe space, unconditional love, someone who saw them, emotional power over you, a future they'll never get back. You didn't just move on, you leveled up. Now hit the comments and type this loud. You can't lose control of what you no longer hold. Remember, first one to post it gets pinned. And if you felt this message hit deep, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, join the channel membership, link in description. We've still got more coming this week to finish off Volume 4 with fire. Let this episode remind you, you weren't the loss, you were the lesson. And now, you're the upgrade. Let's keep rising. So let's make it crystal clear one last time. You didn't lose a person. You lost a pattern, a draining, emotionally bankrupt loop that kept you stuck trying to prove your worth to someone who never knew what to do with it. They didn't leave a situation that was broken. They left the version of you that would have let them stay. And now, you're no longer chasing. You're no longer begging. You're no longer dimming your light just to keep someone else from squinting. You became the version of yourself they never believed you'd become, and the second they realized they couldn't control your emotions anymore, they lost control of their own. So here's your last reminder. You can't lose control of what you no longer hold. First person to comment, it gets pinned. You already know the deal. If this episode hit you in the gut, in the best way possible, like this video to help it reach more people stuck in avoidance cycles. Subscribe and turn on all notifications, because we are just getting started. Join the channel membership for exclusive bonus drops and raw content I never post publicly, links in the description. And now, let's talk about what's coming next. You thought they didn't care. You thought they walked away clean. You thought your silence meant nothing to them. But what if I told you the moment you stopped giving a damn is the exact moment they started losing theirs? In episode 25, I'm breaking down the 5 unspoken triggers that send your avoidant ex spiraling into obsession after you let go. We're talking real psychology, how your emotional detachment flips every power dynamic they tried to control. If you want to know what made them start lurking, start fantasizing. Start questioning if letting you go was the biggest mistake they ever made. That's where we're going next. So don't miss it. Final week. Final fire. Volume 4 is going out with a bang. You already know what to do. Lock in, level up, and let's keep winning. Without them, let's get it. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Ace Wisdom. Week 4. When you win without them. Volume 4, Episode 25. They didn't think you'd actually do it. They never thought you'd let go. They thought the cycle would keep spinning. You hurt, you wait, you reach out. That no matter how many times they distance themselves, you'd still be there. Wounded, waiting, wondering. But one day, you didn't text back. You didn't ask if they were okay. You didn't beg for clarity. You went silent. And that silence, it hit them harder than your presence ever did. Welcome back to Week 4, the week we stop explaining our worth and start embodying it. The week we bury the old version of ourselves that begged for someone who never truly showed up. This is the week where everything shifts. And if you've been locked in since Week 1, especially through Week 3, I just want to say thank you. You didn't just watch passively, you felt it, you lived it. Your comments, your stories, your healing, it's not just content, it's a movement. But if this is your first time watching, or if you've been secretly binge-watching without hitting that red button, now's the time. Subscribe, turn on notifications, like this video, share it with someone who needs to wake up, and if you're ready to go even deeper, join the channel membership. Links in the description. This is Volume 4, Episode 25, and trust me, this one's going to cut deep, because today we're unpacking 5 psychological reasons your avoidant ex started obsessing the second you actually let go. Not the moment you posted a thirst trap. Not when you went on that fake date to make them jealous. Not when you sent that "hope you're well" text just to fish for a reply. I'm talking about the moment you detached with dignity, the moment you stopped reaching back into a fire that only ever burned you. That moment was the one they felt. Because here's what most people don't understand about avoidant exes. They want you close enough to feel desired, but far enough to avoid accountability. They crave intimacy, but fear vulnerability. They test your boundaries, but panic when you enforce them. They pull away, expecting you to chase, and when you don't, it rewires their brain. Let's get something straight. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Viktor Frankl. And that's exactly what you did. You stopped trying to fix someone who was committed to emotional distance. You stopped breaking your own heart to give them comfort. You stopped holding the door open for someone who only came in when it was convenient. And the moment you made that shift, they felt it in their body. An ache, a tension, a tightening in the chest they couldn't explain. Because your attention was their safety net. Your availability gave them power. But when you withdrew that energy, they had to sit with their own silence. And suddenly, it wasn't so peaceful. Here's a cold psychological fact you won't hear often. Avoidantly attached individuals are more likely to experience obsessive preoccupation when the safe pursuer stops pursuing. Translation: they don't spiral when you cry. They spiral when you vanish. But this time, you didn't disappear in anger. You didn't block them, bash them, or blow up their phone. You didn't post subliminal quotes hoping they'd notice. You just walked away, with calm, with clarity, with class. And that calmness, it's louder than any argument you could have had. Because the one thing the avoidant can't handle is not being in control of your emotions anymore. So in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 very specific things you did, consciously or not, that flipped their script and triggered the obsession they're too proud to admit. The way they're checking your stories from a burner account, the way they're suddenly posting thirst traps or trauma dumping online, the way mutual friends are mysteriously bringing up your name. You're not crazy, you're not imagining it. They feel your absence now, and it's not romantic. It's consequential. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why letting go wasn't just healing, it was the greatest revenge you never had to plan. But I've got a challenge for you. Watch until key point 4. In that section, I'm going to drop a secret mantra that reflects your shift into power, and I'm only giving it to those who watch all the way through. The first person to comment it will get pinned at the top. But for now, here's what I want everyone watching to do. Scroll down to the comments and type, "No more chasing, I've already won." Let that be your declaration, not to impress them, but to remind yourself. You don't have to fight for attention anymore. You are the attention. You don't need to chase validation. You are the standard. Because here's the truth no one ever told you. The person who walks away without explanation becomes the loudest echo in someone's mind. Let that echo be you. Let your silence scream. Let your absence teach. Let your growth haunt them in ways your words never could. This video isn't about punishing anyone. It's about awakening the part of you that forgot who the hell you are. The part that used to settle. The part that used to tolerate. The part that used to wait. No more. You've already won. Let's talk about why they're just now realizing it. Let's begin. Stay focused. 1. Your silence disrupted their control loop. Avoidant exes aren't afraid of you leaving. They're afraid of you finally meaning it. See, an avoidant thrives on predictable imbalance. They pull away, and you chase. They breadcrumb, and you overthink. They ignore, and you explain. It's not always malicious. It's emotional survival. For them, distance equals safety. And the second you give them space, they feel in control. But when you go quiet, when you refuse to engage, explain, react, or play the same emotional tag they've always won at, you break their loop. You force them to confront the very thing they fear the most, powerlessness. Your silence was not immature. It wasn't passive-aggressive. It wasn't a mind game. It was a boundary, and boundaries terrify the avoidant because they signal that you've outgrown the dynamic. According to studies in attachment theory, avoidant types struggle when their partner begins to self-regulate without them. They're used to being the emotionally distant one. So when you become emotionally unavailable, they feel exposed, uncomfortable, unstable, and suddenly obsessed. Why? Because now they're the one wondering. Now they're checking your stories. Now they're asking mutual friends if you've moved on. Now they're revisiting old messages, trying to decode where they lost the grip. You flipped the polarity. You were the emotionally available one, the safe place. But now you're gone, not physically, energetically. Never waste your energy trying to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Morgan Freeman. And without your energy feeding the system, their whole emotional strategy collapses. Because your avoidant ex didn't miss you at first. They missed your reaction, your availability, your emotional labor. And when all of that disappeared, obsession kicked in. They don't know how to re-engage with someone who no longer fears losing them. So what do they do instead? They spiral. They lurk. They test you with subtle reach-outs. They post subliminal, I'm unbothered stories. They try to trigger you back into the old cycle. Why? Because silence means you're no longer under their spell. Silence means you've seen the game for what it is. Silence means you've become unavailable to chaos. and that, more than anything, makes them spiral. So don't underestimate it. Your silence wasn't you giving up. It was you leveling up. And trust me, they felt it. They're still feeling it, and we're just getting started. 2. You became the one. They couldn't read anymore. Avoidants don't just fear intimacy, they fear emotional unpredictability, but not in you, in themselves. They've learned to stay safe by decoding your patterns. When you get anxious, they expect texts. When you get ignored, they expect a reaction. When you get hurt, they expect guilt trips or attempts to reconnect. But when you let go for real, no guilt trips, no passive aggression, no one last message. You break their inner algorithm. You become a mystery. And avoidants hate mysteries they can't solve, especially when it's you, the person they thought they had emotionally figured out. Why do you think so many avoidants come back when you've finally moved on? Not because they want to rebuild love, but because they want to reclaim control over the version of you they no longer recognize. See, they're obsessed with emotional safety. And for a while, you were predictable. You'd double text, you'd vent, you'd reach out just to check in. But now you're detached. Now you're unreadable. Now you post, smile, glow, vanish, without any trace of emotional turmoil, and that drives them mad. What we cannot understand, we come to fear. What we fear, we often try to control. Carl Jung. That's what your avoidant ex is doing now. They're trying to decode your silence like it's a riddle, trying to interpret every subtle change in your tone, your timing, your posts, as if it's all about them, because now they can't predict you, and unpredictability makes them anxious. Yes, the avoidant becomes anxious the moment you become unavailable. Here's the kicker. They don't even want to reconnect for something healthy. They just want to stop wondering. They want the comfort of knowing they could still get a response, still get under your skin, still have an emotional effect. But instead, what do they see? Nothing. They don't know if you're dating. They don't know if you're hurting. They don't know if you still care. And that is what starts the obsession, not your presence, your emotional distance. Because let's be honest, they didn't want to keep you. They just wanted to know they still had you. And now they're spiraling, not because you changed, but because you stopped being easy to read, easy to reach, easy to trigger. You became the storm they can't forecast. And no matter how emotionally detached they claim to be, every time they check your profile, see you glow differently, or feel your absence, that mystery grows, and so does their obsession. 3. You became proof that they were replaceable. Let's be brutally honest. Your avoidant ex never truly believed you'd move on without them. They just assumed you'd upgrade your outfits, not your mindset. They expected you to fake glow on social media while still quietly breaking behind closed doors. But then it hit them. You weren't pretending. You were actually healing. You were actually rising. You were actually living a life where they were no longer the center of your emotional universe, and that shook them to their core. Because here's the part no avoidant wants to admit. They didn't want to love you better. They just didn't want you loved better by someone else. Avoidants operate from a place of emotional scarcity. They struggle to give, but they still want to be seen as irreplaceable. They want to leave and still be the best thing that ever happened to you. So when you stopped centering them, when you showed them, without words, that their exit didn't break you, you became evidence that they weren't as special as they imagined. And that's a blow to the ego they didn't see coming. They thought you'd be working on yourself while secretly hoping for their return. They thought you'd be dating, but constantly comparing new people to them. They thought they could come back at any time and you'd still be there, softer, smaller, waiting. Instead, you became the version of yourself they never had access to because they didn't deserve it. And now Now they're watching you from the shadows, obsessing over a single question. What if someone else gets the version of you I threw away? What if someone else benefits from your glow-up, your peace, your joy, your emotional depth? They never wanted you to go and become unforgettable to someone else. They just wanted to be your final chapter. And now they're realizing they were barely a footnote. Never allow someone to be your priority while you remain their option. Mark Twain. You're not their option anymore. You're not in the waiting room anymore. You're not the placeholder anymore. You're proof that life doesn't pause for those who can't show up. And here's the wildest part. You didn't become cold. You didn't become bitter. You didn't even seek revenge. You just leveled up quietly and consistently. You worked, you healed, you upgraded, and now their worst nightmare is unfolding in real time. You're glowing without them. You're growing without them, and they're stuck watching, knowing someone else will never have to heal from them like you did. That's the obsession, not love, not longing, ego collapse. You're not just winning, you're proof they were never needed to begin with. 4. Your energy became too expensive for their games. Avoidants don't respond to begging. They don't respond to "let's talk" texts. They don't respond to logic, reason, or carefully written paragraphs explaining how much you care. They respond to value shifts. And you? You stopped being emotionally cheap. Your time, your presence, your validation, it stopped being on discount. You removed the free trial access to your love. You stopped giving out premium energy to people who brought nothing but confusion and withdrawal. That's when everything changed. Your avoidant ex isn't obsessed with you. They're obsessed with the you that no longer plays the role they assigned you. You used to be predictable, accessible, available on demand. Now, you're booked, you're grounded. You're no longer entertaining emotional toddlers in grown bodies, and that makes your energy too expensive for their games. When you learn how much you're worth, you'll stop giving people discounts. That's what happened. You took inventory of your emotional output. You realized you were financing someone else's avoidance with your love, and you made a silent but dangerous decision. I'm done. Not bitter, not resentful, just done. And from that moment on they could feel it. Because avoidance may act aloof, but they are hyper-attuned to emotional shifts. They feel the moment you stop being emotionally invested, and it triggers a deep internal panic. Wait, I don't have access anymore. Wait, they're not even mad. Wait, did I just lose something irreplaceable? The answer, yes. Because your energy stopped being available for guessing games, mixed signals, and emotional gymnastics. You became peaceful, and peace is poison to people who thrive in chaos. Here's where it gets even more real. Now they want back in, not because they've changed, but because your energy now feels like luxury. They want the old access without doing the new work. They want the old version of you, the one that tolerated, explained, stayed, without having to evolve themselves. And they can't have that anymore, because you've changed your emotional pricing. You no longer give attention for breadcrumbs. You no longer water dead plants. You no longer donate your spirit to people allergic to depth. And that is the source of the obsession. They don't know how to handle the fact that your energy, once free and unlimited, is now locked behind boundaries, purpose, and peace. So here's your secret mantra. The first person to comment it gets pinned. My energy is not a playground. Comment it if you feel this shift. Say it to yourself when you're tempted to go back, when the silence feels lonely, when the ego wants closure. You don't need closure. You've got clarity. And your energy now has a price. 5. You started giving yourself everything they withheld. Let's get one thing straight. Your avoidant ex never expected you to love yourself. Not fully, not consistently, not out loud. They expected you to keep searching for scraps, to keep shrinking yourself just to feel chosen, to keep doubting your worth so they could feel powerful. But the second you flipped the script and started giving yourself everything they used to ration out, their world flipped upside down. You stopped waiting for their approval and gave yourself validation. You stopped begging for intimacy and gave yourself peace. You stopped craving reassurance and gave yourself the truth. You stopped playing starving lover and became your own source of abundance. And that's what triggered the obsession, because deep down, your avoidant ex knew they were only powerful as long as you felt empty. They withheld affection to keep you anxious. They kept things vague so you'd chase clarity. They stayed emotionally distant so you'd always be the one reaching. But suddenly, you weren't reaching anymore. You weren't checking their page. You weren't reacting to their stories. You weren't seeking closure. You were flourishing. That's when it hit them, the love you were giving them. It wasn't even your best, because the version of you now, this healed, glowing, grounded version, is someone they never even got to meet. The relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. Robert Holden. And now they see it. They see the glow they couldn't dim. They see the light they used to take for granted. They see the confidence they once mistook for clinginess, now turned into quiet power. That's the thing about obsession. It doesn't start when you want them. It starts when they realize they never truly had you, not the whole you, because you didn't even have the whole you until now. Now you've stopped asking, why didn't they choose me? And you've started asking, why did I keep abandoning myself for someone who couldn't meet me emotionally? That's when the obsession began, because nothing haunts an avoidant more than the version of you that doesn't need them anymore. And let's be clear, you don't. You don't need someone who made you question your worth. You don't need to replay the story just to change the ending. You don't need to lose yourself trying to be enough for someone who didn't even know what they were looking for. You gave yourself the love they withheld, the patience they lacked, the stability they refused to offer. And now, you've become the one that got away, not because you ran, but because you rose. And they'll spend the rest of their life chasing versions of you they'll never have access to again. So now you know. It wasn't the texts you didn't send. It wasn't the calls you stopped making. It was the shift in energy that they never saw coming. They felt it the second you reclaimed your power. The second your silence wasn't a strategy, but a standard. The second they realized your peace was permanent. They thought they had time. They thought they could keep you on the shelf, wrapped in maybes and not right nows. But now they're just another person watching your glow up from a distance. And that distance is eating them alive. If you've made it this far, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another episode. We're just getting started. And if you're ready to go deeper, join the channel membership. Links in the description. This is not about revenge. This is about revelation. You didn't lose them. They lost the best version of themselves they never stepped up to meet. And speaking of spiraling, tomorrow's episode is the one they don't want you to see, because we're about to walk straight into day 30 of silence. That sacred point where your absence becomes unbearable. Episode 26, Day 30 of Silence, and your avoidant ex can't handle it anymore. You'll finally understand why the 30-day mark is a psychological breaking point, what causes their delayed emotional panic, and how your silence turns from peace into pressure, without you lifting a finger. You've made it 29 days strong. Let me walk you through what happens on day 30. Comment below if you're ready. Let them feel the silence they gave me. Until then, stay grounded, stay unfazed, stay winning, and remember, they didn't expect you to grow. Now they can't stop watching. Let's go. Volume 4 continues tomorrow. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Ace Wisdom. Week 4, When You Win Without Them, Volume 4, Episode 26. They told you silence would make you forgettable, but they forgot one thing. The most unforgettable energy is the one that doesn't beg to be remembered. Welcome back to Volume 4, Week 4, When You Win Without Them. If you've made it through episodes 23, 24, and 25 this week, you already know this ain't just recovery, it's revenge through reinvention. You've stopped asking if they miss you, you've stopped checking your phone for closure, you've stopped wondering what you could have done differently, because now you see it clearly. They didn't break you, they built the fire in you, and that fire is exactly what they can't handle now. Today we hit episode 26, day 30 of silence, and your avoidant ex can't handle it anymore. Let's get one thing clear from the start. Avoidants don't fear being left. They fear being seen. They fear being emotionally exposed. They fear the person who finally walks away and never looks back. And that's what you've become. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped showing up for a connection that didn't respect your value. And your absence, it's not invisible, it's loud. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Avoidants don't feel your presence when you were begging. They feel your absence when you stop performing. When you go silent for a few days, they feel smug. At 7 days, they feel smugger. But when you hit day 30, the power dynamic flips. That's when it starts to mess with their reality. That's when the illusion of control slips through their fingers. That's when the anxiety sets in, the kind they swore they didn't have, because your energy used to orbit them. Now, you've left their emotional solar system and taken the sun with you. They're not just missing attention, they're missing warmth, security, validation, the very things they were too emotionally avoidant to accept when they had it. Now they crave it, because what once felt like a guarantee now feels like a ghost. And listen, don't let anyone tell you that silence is weak. Silence is strategy. Silence is sacred. Silence is what separates the impulsive from the powerful. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Silence is safer than speech." The man who talks freely often reveals his own wounds. You didn't just withhold communication, you withheld access. And now, the same person who once needed space can't stand the fact that you're finally at peace in your own. But here's what they never saw coming. Your silence wasn't meant to punish them. It was meant to heal you. And the more you healed, the more you stopped needing answers. The more you stopped seeking revenge. The more you stopped checking your worth against their indecision. And that transformation, that's what's destroying them right now. Because your avoidant ex always counted on your emotional dependence. They relied on your confusion. They weaponized your empathy. But now that you've pulled back, now that you've hit day 30, they don't see a desperate ex. They see a man who's dangerous in his detachment. Let's call it for what it is. The person you used to be. The one who waited, chased, justified, explained, overthought, died somewhere between day 7 and day 21. And in his place, a new version emerged. Not colder, not crueler, just clearer. You've stopped needing to be chosen because you've chosen yourself. You've stopped wondering if they'll ever come back because you're not sure you'd even open the door now. That's real power. And that's what today's episode is all about, the breaking point, not yours, theirs. Because when an avoidant ex realizes you've truly moved on, not as a threat, not as a bluff, but as a fact, they don't just get uncomfortable, they spiral. Now, before we dig into what's happening in their head during this silence, I need you to do 3 things. Hit that like button so this message reaches more warriors on the healing path. Subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because the final week of Volume 4 is going to be devastatingly powerful. I don't want you to miss a single insight. Join the channel membership today. The link is in the description below. It's for those of you who are done playing nice with people who play games with your heart. You want raw, you want real, you want results. Join the tribe. We're not here to heal in silence, we're here to rise in power. And now, here's your first action step to anchor this transformation. Comment below right now. I outgrew the version they left behind. Say it with your chest. Say it without apology. Say it not because they need to hear it, but because you need to believe it. Because this isn't just day 30 of silence, this is day 1 of domination. Because this isn't just day 30 of silence, this is day 1 of domination. Domination over your old patterns, over your old pain, over the idea that you needed them to become this. You didn't, you just needed silence. And in that silence, you didn't just survive. You evolved. Now buckle up, because in key point 4, I'm dropping a secret mantra that unlocks the next level of this journey. And the first person to comment it gets pinned. Let's get into it. Your avoidant ex thought they could live without you. Let's see how they handle your absence now. Let's go. Stay focused. Key point 1. They thought you'd break first. Let's get this out of the way. Avoidants don't believe in your strength until it costs them everything. At the start of your silence, they weren't worried. They assumed this was just another one of your emotional protests, a phase, a reaction, a bluff. They told themselves, you'll be back. You always come back. Because that's what they expected, not because you're weak, but because they've been conditioned to think their distance is more powerful than your devotion. See, avoidants rely on a cycle. They push, you pull. They detach, you panic. They go cold, you over-explain. And every time you return first, you reinforce their illusion of emotional superiority. They don't just believe they're in control. They believe you need them more than they ever needed you. So when you walked away and went silent, they didn't flinch. They assumed it was temporary. They assumed you'd cave. They assumed, like always, the pain of absence would override your logic and lead you back to their door, tail tucked, heart cracked, ready to settle for scraps. But day 30 proves something they never anticipated. You didn't just stay gone, you got stronger while you were gone. And that's when it starts to hit them. Not when you disappear, not when you stop calling. But when your absence no longer feels like punishment, it feels like indifference. That's the part they didn't prepare for. Because indifference, that's not a cry for help. That's a closed door. That's a power shift. That's the loudest kind of silence. The kind that says, I've outgrown needing you to notice me. Psychologically speaking, this is where the emotional tables turn. According to the pursuer-distancer dynamic, avoidants gain a sense of power when the other person is chasing. It reaffirms their self-worth without requiring vulnerability. But when the pursuer stops, when the texts stop, when the validation stops, when the energy exchange breaks, the avoidant doesn't feel calm. They feel cornered, because now they're the ones left with racing thoughts. They're the ones replaying the last conversation. They're the ones stalking you from a fake account, trying to figure out if you've moved on, or worse, if you've elevated. And you want to know what really messes them up. You didn't break. You built. You built discipline. You built peace. You built a version of yourself that no longer finds chaos attractive. You stopped trying to win back the love that hurt you and started loving the version of yourself they never bothered to understand. That's what's haunting them now. Because to an avoidant, silence was always a weapon they used to feel safe. But now that you own the silence, now that you hold the pause, now that you don't even need a reaction, they realize they're not the strong one anymore. In the next key point, we're going even deeper. We'll talk about how your emotional regulation is exposing their emotional instability and why the longer you remain unbothered, the more they unravel behind the scenes. You've already won the first battle. You didn't break. Now we go for the war. Key point 2. Your calm is exposing their chaos. Here's what no one tells you about avoidance. They need you to be emotionally unstable. They need you reactive. They need you confused. Because if you're spiraling, they get to stay in control. They get to feel safe in their emotional laziness. But now, you're not spiraling. You're centered. And that calm, that quiet, unbothered presence you've built over the last 30 days, it's driving them insane. Let me break it down. Avoidants are masters at controlled chaos. They create distance, stir confusion, plant doubt, then hide behind, "I just need space." But what they never expected was this. You stopped playing the game entirely. You're no longer reacting to breadcrumbs. You're not decoding their hot and cold behavior. You're not texting them out of guilt or nostalgia. You're just existing, peacefully, confidently, silently, and nothing disturbs an avoidant more than someone who's no longer disturbed by them. This is where psychology starts working in your favor. According to emotional regulation studies, when one person in a dynamic becomes non-reactive, it destabilizes the other, especially if their power relied on triggering your emotions. Your silence isn't passive, it's a disruption. Your calm isn't weakness, it's strategy. You've become the mirror, and now they're being forced to look at everything they were avoiding, the way they self-sabotaged a good thing, the way they pushed you away thinking you'd always return, the way they hid behind independence when really they were just emotionally immature. And you're no longer making excuses for it. You're no longer apologizing for wanting clarity, effort, or commitment. You're no longer accepting mixed signals as affection. Here's what's happening behind the scenes right now. They're pacing. They're checking your socials but not liking anything. They're wondering who you're talking to. They're overthinking the silence they once weaponized. And why? Because you're not reacting. Because you're not explaining. Because you're not playing defense anymore. Your energy used to feed them. Now it's starving them. They've never had to face the version of you that doesn't flinch. And the more grounded you become, the more ungrounded they feel. That's the part they never prepared for. They were ready for your tears, your texts, your explanations, your panic. But they weren't ready for your peace. Because peace says, I've stopped needing you to validate my worth. I've stopped needing closure from someone who's never been open. Your calm exposes their chaos, like sunlight exposes mold, and now they're sitting in the very discomfort they thought they'd buried under your confusion. You want to know how you win in this phase? Stay still, because every time you don't react, every time you don't reach out, every time you don't respond to the bait, you break their internal pattern. You show them that you are no longer available for emotional manipulation disguised as independence. And once an avoidant loses that grip, they're left with what they've been running from this entire time, themselves, ready for the next level. In key point 3, we're diving into how your glow-up isn't just confidence, it's a direct threat to their emotional identity. And trust me, you showing up as your best self, it's not inspiring them, it's exposing just how replaceable their ego always was. Key point 3. Your glow-up feels like betrayal to them. Let's be brutally honest, your avoidant ex didn't just think you'd wait. They thought you'd wither without them. They thought your confidence would collapse. Your glow would dim, your focus would scatter, that you'd sit in the silence, second-guessing your worth, until you came crawling back. But here you are, thriving, leveling up, healing loudly without needing their permission, and that, more than anything, is what feels like betrayal to them. Why? Because avoidants don't expect your life to expand after they leave. They expect it to shrink. They don't expect your spirit to elevate. They expect it to wait in emotional purgatory for their attention. But now, you're in the gym, you're building that body, you're crushing work, you're locked in on purpose, you're sharper, calmer, harder to access, and more magnetic than ever. And whether they admit it or not, It's driving them crazy. You've got to understand something deep here. Avoidants are secretly ego-driven. They hide behind detachment, but their self-worth is still entangled in how needed they feel, without ever having to fully show up. They want to be missed. They want to be fantasized about. They want to know you're still out there, aching for a second chance. So when you don't, when you stop romanticizing them, when you stop checking for them, when your whole vibe becomes, "I've outgrown that version of me," they don't feel peace. They feel panic. Because now, your glow-up isn't just a personal win. It's a personal attack on the story they've told themselves. The story where they had the power. The story where you were the emotionally weaker one. The story where they were the prize and you were the one who lost. But now, you're the one people notice. You're the one evolving. You're the one who took pain and made it look like a fucking lifestyle upgrade. That glow? That's not just revenge. That's exposure. Here's the paradox avoidants can't handle. They don't want to commit to you, but they also can't stand watching someone else value you better than they did. They want distance, but not disinterest. They want freedom, but not to feel forgotten. They want to move on, but not to see you move on first. And your glow-up confirms the thing they were too afraid to face. You were never the problem. You were just too powerful for their emotional immaturity. So what happens now? Now they watch, they lurk, they scroll, they overthink that new photo. They analyze your captions, they screenshot your wins, and deep down, they're not mad at you for moving on. They're mad that you're doing it without bitterness, without dragging them, without collapsing, because you healed with grace. You elevated with clarity. You upgraded without announcing your pain. And that quiet success, that's the loudest betrayal of all. Want to know what makes you unforgettable now? Not your attachment, not your effort, not your pain. It's your progress. The fact that you didn't just survive their absence, you used it to get clearer, used it to get sharper, used it to become the version of you they never saw coming. You turned heartbreak into hunger, distance into discipline, silence into strategy. That's what they never expected. And now, they're not just dealing with the loss of your love. They're dealing with the reality that someone else is going to get the best version of you, the version they never deserved. But they'll never say it, because if they do, they'd have to admit that you rising was never betrayal. It was just the natural result of their inability to rise with you. Coming up next, key point 4, the final emotional bullet of this episode. We're going to talk about what happens when your ex realizes that they're the only one who stayed stuck. And yes, the secret mantra drops there. First comment gets pinned. Wrap up and tease for next episode. Let's make one thing clear before we close. You didn't just go silent. You became untouchable. They thought you'd break. You built. They thought you'd chase. You chose you. They thought they could walk away without consequence. But your absence became the loudest consequence of all. And now, on day 30, you've entered a level they can't access. Powerful, calm, reborn. So if this episode hit deep, like, share, subscribe, and don't just watch, join the membership. The link's in the description, because you're not just healing anymore. You're becoming someone unrecognizable to the person who took you for granted. And speaking of becoming, in the next episode, Volume 4, Episode 27, we're going even further. You became the person they can't reach, and these 6 things prove it. This one is ruthless. We're breaking down the 6 brutal signs that your avoidant ex no longer recognizes you. Not because you've changed your hair, your job, your circle, but because your energy is now too expensive for their games. We'll expose the new aura they can't decode, the silence they can't penetrate, and the success they can't stand watching. This is the part they never prepared for, you rising beyond their reach. And trust me, you don't want to miss this. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Like this video if you've felt the power of silence. Join the channel membership right now for exclusive next-level content, links in the description. And now, if you're serious about owning your evolution, drop this in the comments right now. I'm not their memory, I'm my own momentum. Type it, own it, and prepare for the moment your glow becomes unreachable. I'll see you in episode 27. Let's go. Volume 4 ain't done cooking yet. Hello everyone, welcome back to Ace Wisdom. Week 4, When You Win Without Them, Volume 4, Episode 27. You vanished, and they didn't even notice, not at first, but now they feel your silence like a punch to the gut. They see your glow and realize it's no longer shining for them, and they're scrambling to figure out how the hell they lost access to the version of you they never thought would leave. This is what happens when you become the person they can't reach. And in this episode, Volume 4, Episode 27, we're breaking down 6 brutal, undeniable signs that you've stepped into a space they no longer qualify for. I want to give a massive shout out to those of you who've been locked in for episodes 23 to 26 of this week. You've felt the shift, you've embraced the silence, and you've shown that this isn't about getting them back. It's about getting yourself back. Now let me come straight at your throat with this. They didn't expect you to get stronger without them. They expected you to stall, to spiral, to sit in that dark room with your phone in your hand, watching their stories, typing and deleting messages, wondering if they'd ever come back. But you didn't. You unplugged. You unfollowed. You unpacked all the lies they told you, and the ones you told yourself just to keep them close. And in that stillness, something dangerous happened. A man is not lost when he's defeated. He is lost when he quits. Paulo Coelho. You didn't quit. You refused to go back to who you were when they had you on a leash. And now, you're not only unavailable, you're untouchable. Let's be clear, this video isn't for the type of person who still hopes they'll get a text back. This video is for the person who finally realized that the version of them who tolerated confusion, disrespect, breadcrumbing, and half-love is gone permanently. This is for the one who leveled up in silence, who healed privately, who rebuilt their mindset, their habits, their boundaries, brick by brick. And the best part, you didn't announce it. You became it. They don't know how to contact the new you. Because the old access points, they're dead. And you didn't slam the door for revenge, you closed it for your rebirth. Because once you start valuing your peace over their presence, the game changes. They used to be able to rattle you with one message. Now, even if they reach out, you don't even flinch. That's power. That's growth. That's the energy of someone who's ascended. But I'm gonna warn you now, this episode's not soft. It's not gentle. It's not designed to comfort your inner child. It's built to wake your inner savage. Because for you to stay unavailable to chaos, you have to know the signs that you're no longer the person they left. You have to recognize your edge, so you never give it away again. So do not skip ahead. Stay until the end. Because sign number 6 is the one they feel the most, but will never admit. It's the one they replay in their mind when they scroll past your new glow-up. It's the one that haunts them, because it proves you were never the problem. And since we're speaking facts, let's talk value real quick. If this channel's been helping you shift your mindset, upgrade your energy, or stop you from doubling back on people who only gave you confusion, then do this now. Hit subscribe. Turn on all notifications and smash that like button so the algorithm knows we're not here to play. We're here to transform. Oh, and don't just watch. Join the movement. Tap the membership link in the description and level up with exclusive content I don't drop on the main feed. If you're tired of watered-down advice and you're ready for raw, real growth from someone who's been through the war and didn't come back weaker, that's where we go even deeper. And yeah, we're doing it again. Drop this in the comments right now. They lost access. I found alignment. Say it like a prayer. Type it like a war cry, because that's what this is now. No more explaining yourself. No more keeping the door cracked just in case they come back changed. No more hoping they'll see your worth. You're not waiting to be noticed. You're building to be undeniable. You're not hard to get. You're just not available for games. So here we go. 6 signs you've become the person they can't reach, and why that truth is breaking them more than they'll ever admit. Let's get into it. Stay focused. Sign number 1, they can't mirror your growth anymore, so they pretend you changed. Let's rip the bandage off, because this one hurts them deep. The moment you start evolving, they can't keep up, not emotionally, not mentally, not energetically. So instead of leveling up with you, what do? They gaslight your glow, they throw shade, they say you've changed, like that's a bad thing. But let's get one thing clear. You were supposed to change. You needed to outgrow the version of yourself that tolerated inconsistency, begged for clarity, and accepted their bare minimum as a love language. So when they say, "You're not the same anymore," you look them dead in the soul and say, "Good." Psychology 101. People who no longer benefit from your old patterns will always feel attacked by your new boundaries. See, they were addicted to the version of you who apologized for wanting more. The version who waited around hoping they'd wake up and finally get it. The version who made excuses for their lack of effort because you knew their heart. They didn't love you. They loved their power over you. And now that it's gone, now that you've taken your power back, reclaimed your voice, and stopped softening yourself just to stay in their story, they're lost. They can't mirror your peace because they're still in pieces. They can't match your pace because they're still in the same loops. You evolved. They stayed distracted. You invested in your healing. They invested in hiding from theirs. You built discipline. They recycled dysfunction. So now, from the outside looking in, they don't know who you are anymore. And that bothers them, not because you've changed, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. Here's the part that stings for them. You didn't just level up. You outgrew their control. You became unavailable for passive-aggressive texts, Unavailable for situationships dressed up as "we're just seeing where this goes." Unavailable for half-love, mixed signals, and emotional dead ends. You became the kind of person they'd have to rise to meet. And instead of rising, they retreated. They tried to drag you back down with phrases like, "You're different now. You think you're better than me. You switched up." Nah, you didn't switch up. You woke up. So proof number one that you've become the person they can't reach. They label your growth as ego. They call your clarity cold. They romanticize the old you because it made them feel secure, even if you were slowly breaking. But here's the truth they won't say out loud. You didn't become unreachable to punish them. You became unreachable to protect yourself, and that's a boundary you never have to apologize for again. Sign number 2. They reach out indirectly but never straightforward. They won't say, "I miss you." They won't say, "I messed up." They won't say, "You didn't deserve the way I treated you." Nah, that would take honesty. That would take accountability. That would require them to sit in the discomfort of their own decisions. And most importantly, it would require them to admit they lost someone they'll never replace. So instead, what do? They drop breadcrumbs. They post cryptic stories. They accidentally like your old photo. They send that "hope you're good" text after weeks or months of silence, like that neutral sentence will magically erase the chaos they left behind. Let's call it what it is. Cowardly communication from someone who knows they no longer have full access. They don't reach out to reconnect. They reach out to re-enter your mind, to see if there's still a crack in the door, to test if they still have pull over you, even if they don't deserve it. Here's the psychological truth. The insecure seek validation in the shadows because the light demands truth. Unknown. When someone knows they've lost their grip on you, they stop being bold, they stop being direct. Instead, they move in the shadows, hoping you'll do the work for them, hoping you'll bring up the past, you'll break the silence, you'll play therapist and decode their mixed signals. But this isn't 2022. This isn't the old you. You don't read between lines anymore. You close the book. Because see, when you were still available, they knew all they had to do was toss a half-hearted "thinking of you," and you'd be right back in your feels. They knew you'd overthink, spiral, maybe even reply just to see where it goes. But now, you leave them on read. You don't even open the message. You see the story, they know you saw it, and you still don't react. And that drives them crazy, because deep down, they don't want you back for love. They want you back to prove they still have influence. But you've outgrown that game. Here's the kicker. They know exactly how to contact you. They know how to write a real apology. They know what accountability looks like. But they don't take that route, because that would require humility. That would require them to say, "I fumbled you." So instead, they choose hints over healing, distraction over depth, access attempts over actual repair. And that's how you know you've become the person they can't reach. They whisper in your direction because they no longer have the voice to speak to you directly. Stay silent, stay solid, stay unavailable to half-hearted ghosts pretending to still matter. You don't chase echoes, you follow peace. Sign number 3. They watch everything, but say nothing. Let's talk about one of the most obvious yet pathetic signs you've become unreachable. They're still watching you. Religiously, silently, obsessively. They won't message you. They won't call. They won't say they're sorry, but they'll sure as hell watch every story. They'll linger in your followers list like a shadow from a past you already outgrew. They'll hover around your socials, liking just enough to be noticed, but never enough to be held accountable. Why? Because they're not brave enough to own the loss. They don't want closure. They want control. Psychologically, this behavior is called lurking for validation. It's what people do when they want access without vulnerability, when they want to stay emotionally close without taking emotional responsibility. People who ghost you still check your social media because they didn't want to lose you. They just didn't want to grow with you. Anonymous. They thought you'd crumble. They thought without their attention you'd shrink. But instead, you got sharper, finer, louder. Your energy changed. Your posts went from vague sadness to quiet confidence. You stopped posting for them and started moving for you. And now, they're glued to the screen, studying your glow-up like it's a blueprint they never had the discipline to follow. Let's be real. If someone watches every move you make online, but doesn't have the decency to speak your name in real life, that's not love. That's emotional surveillance. They're not checking in on you. They're checking to see if they still matter. They want to see if you've replaced them, if you've posted someone new, if you've moved on. And when they don't see signs of heartbreak, it burns. Because the truth is, they expected to be your motivation, but instead they became your lesson. You want proof you've become unreachable? Here it is. They watch. They lurk. They consume your energy through a screen because they're too ashamed, too afraid, and too exposed to show up in person. And the best part? You don't even flinch anymore. You used to check who viewed your story, hoping to see their name. Now, you don't care who watches because you're too focused on what you're building. Let them stalk. Let them obsess. Let them fantasize about the access they used to have. Because nothing screams, "You're no longer welcome," louder than letting them watch your rise in total silence. They can see you, but they can't reach you. That's proof number 3, and that's power. Sign number 4. They can't trigger you anymore, and that drives them insane. This is the one they hate the most, because for the longest time, they had emotional control over you, with a look, with a phrase, with one dry-ass message that said nothing but left you spinning for days. They knew how to activate your anxiety. They knew which buttons to press. They knew how to make you feel like you were always one wrong word away from losing them. And they used that power like a weapon. But now, you don't flinch. You don't bite the bait. You don't even respond. And that silence, that stillness, that non-reactivity, it kills them. Let's break it down. People with avoidant tendencies thrive on control. They don't want connection. They want leverage. They want to know you care more. They want to feel like you're the one trying harder. They want to see you chase, even after they've emotionally starved you. So when you finally stop responding to their games, when their silence no longer makes your heart race, when their vague, dismissive energy no longer pulls you into panic mode, that's when they realize you've unplugged. The ability to remain calm when disrespected is a superpower. Unknown. You're not reactive anymore. You're regulated. You're grounded. You're in control of yourself, while they're still trying to control you. See, your old self would have jumped to reply, would have double-texted, would have poured your heart out just to get something back. But now, they send a dry message, you leave it on read. They post a thirst trap, you scroll right past it. They act hot one day and cold the next, and you stay unmoved. Because you've learned, emotional manipulation only works when you're still seeking approval. But once you validate yourself, once you build your self-worth from the inside out, once you stop needing their response to feel seen, they lose their grip on your nervous system. And this is why it drives them mad. They used to be your emotional center of gravity. Now they're just static noise, a distraction you've trained your mind to ignore. They come at you sideways with the same tired patterns, and you respond with nothing. No drama, no clapback, no begging, just boundaries. You're too peaceful to be provoked, too whole to be shaken, too elevated to be entertained by their chaos. So if you're watching this wondering, why are they acting weird? Why are they suddenly reaching out just to disappear again? Understand this. They don't want to reconnect. They want to rewire your nervous system back to the old patterns, but you've healed, you've grown, you've evolved, you're no longer programmable, and that is why they can't reach you anymore. By the way, if you're still here, you're really tapped in. So here's your moment. Comment this mantra right now. I don't chase peace, I am peace. First person to drop that in the comments, you're getting pinned, because this episode isn't just about emotional distance, it's about emotional mastery. You've trained yourself out of reaction mode, and that's what makes you dangerous. Let's keep going. Proof number 5 is even colder. Sign number 5. Their new replacement can't touch your presence. Let's cut the fake healing, the stage smiles, and the desperate captions. You know what hurts them the most? They tried to replace you, but all they did was downgrade. See, the second you pulled back, the second you stopped chasing, explaining, defending, they rushed to fill the silence, not with growth, not with self-reflection, but with a warm body. They didn't heal, they just hurried, because when they lost your energy, they didn't just lose a partner, they lost a mirror, a reflection of their highest potential, a version of themselves they could have become if they were willing to grow with you, but they weren't. So they settled, and now they're parading this new connection all over social media, trying to prove something that even they don't believe. Their new person, just a prop, a performance, because deep down they know what you brought can't be replicated. You weren't just attractive. You were anchored. You weren't just fun. You were focused. You didn't just show up. You poured in. You challenged them. You supported them. You stood by them when they had nothing but chaos. And you gave them structure, vision, stability. And now, they're trying to recreate that energy with someone who doesn't even speak your emotional language. Let's be honest. You were the upgrade. They were used to people who tolerated their bare minimum. But you expected effort, you set standards, you held them accountable to who they said they wanted to be, and when they failed to rise, they labeled you too much, then ran to someone who demanded nothing. That's not peace, that's emotional hiding. You can't replace someone who was aligned with your soul, with someone who just matches your trauma. Anonymous. But that's what they did. They chose comfort over connection, familiar dysfunction over evolved partnership, and that rebound, it might have distracted them for a minute. But it didn't fulfill them, it didn't awaken their spirit, it didn't challenge them to evolve, it just numbed the loss. Here's how you know you've become the person they can't reach. They publicly moved on, but privately. They compare everyone to you. Your energy, your loyalty, your presence, and nothing measures up, because you weren't just a vibe, you were a standard, and now they're out here in spiritual poverty, trying to replicate a connection that was custom-built for their elevation, while you're thriving in silence, watching them try to duplicate something that came from within you. Let them post, let them pose, let them pretend. Because nothing exposes regret louder than someone forcing happiness for an audience, while suffering in private over the one that got away. That's you, and that's proof number 5. Let's keep going. Because the final sign, it's the one that breaks them. Sign number 6. They finally realize you're not coming back. This time, this is it. The one they never saw coming. The moment that sinks in so deep, it reconstructs their ego. It's not when you blocked them, not when you ignored the "Hey stranger" text, not even when they saw you glowing without them. It's when they finally accept that you're gone for good. That's when the regret hits like a freight train. Let me make this clear. At first, they thought it was a phase, that your silence was performative, that your distance was a tactic, that eventually you'd circle back. Because that's what they expected, that you'd fold again, that you'd chase again, that you'd forgive too quickly, just like before. But now it's been weeks, months, and that door they left cracked open. You've cemented it shut. No drama, no revenge, no warning, just distance that turned permanent. And that's when it hits. The biggest loss is not when someone leaves. It's when they evolve to the point you no longer recognize them. Unknown. You didn't just walk away, you outgrew them, and they can feel it in their chest every time they remember how easily they dismissed you, how lightly they took your love, how arrogantly they assumed you'd always be there. But you're not anymore. And here's what breaks them. They can't recreate your energy. They can't decode your mindset. They can't access the world you're building because it's not for them anymore. They see you growing, but they're not part of it. They see you shining, but you're not checking to see if they notice. That reality, it's devastating for someone who thought they had forever to play games. They remember your effort now, your softness, your presence, your patience. They remember the way you gave, the way you loved, the way you stayed solid through their chaos. And they finally realize you weren't asking for too much, they were offering too little, but now it's too late. Here's what no one tells them, the most painful form of karma. Watching the person you thought would wait for you, never look back, not to check in, not to make peace, not even to say goodbye, because that version of you, the one who tolerated half love and confusion, they buried that version the day you chose peace over potential. And you know what really twists the knife? You didn't become cold. You became clear. Clear on your value. Clear on your standards. Clear on the fact that loving someone shouldn't feel like bleeding for their comfort. So now, when they reach for you, they hit a wall, not a bitter wall, not an angry wall, a silent, healed, untouchable wall they built themselves when they taught you to live without them. So let's close this out. Sign number 6 that you've become the person they can't reach. They finally realize you're not playing hard to get, you're just gone, for real. No access, no redo, no more maybe someday. Just peace, just progress, just you, unavailable, unbothered, untouchable. That's the final nail in their fantasy, and it's the beginning of your next chapter. If you felt this message deep in your gut, here's your next move. Hit like, smash subscribe, turn on notifications, because Volume 4 is still going, and the final episodes will shake something loose in you. Want to go deeper? Join the channel membership using the link in the description. Get bonus videos, exclusive mindset drops, and behind-the-scenes game I only give to my tribe. And don't forget to comment your mantra from earlier. I don't chase peace, I am peace. Let the world know you're not available for games. You're not hoping for closure. You're not going back. They lost access, you found alignment, and that's the whole point. And there it is, 6 undeniable signs you've become the person they can't reach. Not because you're playing games, but because you finally chose you. They thought you'd spiral. You evolved. They expected to see desperation. You moved in discipline. They assumed your silence meant weakness. But it became your superpower. Let this be your reminder. You're not the same person who begged for clarity, over-explained your worth, or tolerated breadcrumbs in the name of love. That person is gone, and what's standing in their place is someone solid, stoic, unbothered. If this episode shook something inside you, do not keep it to yourself. Smash the like button, subscribe, and turn on all notifications, and comment that mantra loud: I don't chase peace, I am peace. First person who commented it already got pinned, but it's never too late to claim it. And if you're ready for the next level of this journey, Tap the membership link in the description, behind-the-scenes videos, bonus content, raw, real guidance you won't find anywhere else. But before we go, let me tease what's coming in Volume 4, Episode 28. You detached, but not in chaos, not in drama, not in pettiness. You walked away in silence, stillness, dignity, and guess what? They never saw it coming. In the next episode, we're unpacking 4 reasons your avoidant ex couldn't believe you detached with dignity. You didn't argue, you didn't announce, you just vanished with self-respect, and that shook their entire system. They thought you'd beg, you bowed out. They thought you'd chase, you chose peace. Tune in for episode 28. It's sharp, it's surgical, it's the emotional checkmate they never prepared for. We're not just moving on, we're moving up. See you in the next one. Stay sharp, stay silent, and most of all, stay unreachable. Hello everyone, welcome back to Ace Wisdom. Week 4, When You Win Without Them, Volume 4, Episode 28. Today's video is about the 4 reasons your avoidant ex couldn't believe you detached with dignity. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because they never believed you could thrive without them. And now, every smile you post, every glow-up they scroll past, every rumor they hear about your peace, your purpose, your new energy, it destroys them. Let's not sugarcoat it. Your avoidant ex isn't mad because you're gone. They're mad because you're good. Before we dive in, if you've been locked in from episode 23 through 28 this week, much respect. You've been walking through fire. You've been sitting with uncomfortable truths. You've been doing what most people avoid, looking at the pain, and instead of running from it, you used it as fuel, as fire, as a forge. Because healing is not passive, healing is war, and you've shown up every day like a warrior. So let me say this up front. If you finish this episode, you won't just understand your avoidant ex better. You'll walk away with an edge they never wanted you to find. You'll know exactly why they act so cold, but keep watching. You'll understand why they seem over you but still linger. And most importantly, you'll learn how to stop giving power to people who can't handle your peace. Let's get real. Avoidant types don't ghost you because they don't care. They ghost you because emotional intimacy terrifies them. Getting close means being seen, and that scares the hell out of them. So instead of facing that fear, they run, they distance, they detach, they disappear. And in their mind, they expect you to break, to chase, to beg, to spin in circles wondering, what did I do wrong? But then, something dangerous happens. You don't crack, you build. You stop texting, you stop posting thirst traps, you stop watching them, and you start watching yourself. That's the part they didn't prepare for, because now every inch of growth you gain in silence is a mirror in their face, and they hate what they see. Let's be honest. They were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of losing the version of themselves they could play it safe with. The you who tolerated breadcrumbs. The you who accepted mixed signals. The you who showed up 100% for someone giving 40 on a good day. But this version of you, the centered, happy, peaceful, powerful version, that version is unreachable. That version is dangerous. Not to others, but to the stories your avoidant ex told themselves to justify leaving you behind. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." In relationships, that tribe is your past, your programming, your belief that love must come with pain to be real. But now, you're rewriting that. And as you do, something unexpected happens. Your ex watches from the shadows, smiling online, pretending to move on. But inside, they're wrestling with a storm of, how did they get so strong? Why do they look happier now? What if I made the biggest mistake of my life? But pride won't let them say it. Fear won't let them admit it. So they sit there, scrolling in silence, judging you in silence, regretting in silence. And you know what? That's not your burden anymore. So why are they really bothered? Not because you moved on, but because you moved on without spiraling, because you found clarity instead of chaos, because you learned how to love yourself instead of begging them to do it, because the version of you they see now is the version they never had the courage to grow beside. And now, they don't have access, they can't manipulate it, they can't reach it. You're no longer their emotional safety net. And for someone who avoids emotional accountability, that's terrifying. So in this episode, I'm going to break down the top 5 psychological reasons your avoidant ex hates seeing you happy, and why your glow-up triggers them in ways they can't even explain. But listen closely. Point number 4 contains the secret mantra, and the first person to comment it below gets pinned to the top of this video. That's not just a comment. It's a public declaration that says, I don't need your love to be whole. I don't need your attention to feel seen. I don't need your permission to win. If this is the message you've been waiting for, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure your notifications are on. Because the final week of Volume 4 is coming, and it's going to be relentless. We're not easing off the gas. We're diving deeper, getting sharper, speaking louder. So if you're done living small, if you're done wondering whether your silence is noticed, if you're done doubting your worth based on someone else's avoidance, this channel is your weapon. Click the join button and become a member. That link in the description gives you exclusive content, bonus episodes, and direct access to the energy you've been looking for. And while you're here, drop this in the comments. I'm done being someone's maybe. I'm building my always. Because this isn't a rebound era. This isn't a look at me now phase. This is your becoming. This is the moment where you take every ounce of pain, every silent night, every unanswered message, and you alchemize it into power. Your avoidant ex may have triggered your downfall, but your rise, that was all you. Now let's talk about the 5 brutal truths they don't want you to know. Let's get into it. Stay focused. Reason 1, they mistook your calm for compliance until you vanished. Avoidants are wired to test boundaries. They won't always say what they want. They'll just push, pull, disengage, disappear. Then peek to see if you're still there. It's manipulation masked as confusion, withdrawal disguised as just needing space. And when you didn't explode, when you didn't chase or collapse or beg for clarity, they misread it. They told themselves, see, they're chill, they get it, they're not going anywhere. But what they didn't realize is, you weren't being patient, you were being done. See, the silent ones are the most dangerous, because you weren't performing, you weren't trying to guilt them into staying, you weren't engaging in emotional tug-of-war, you just observed, processed, and slowly backed out of the game. And that calm, that stoic withdrawal, they thought it was compliance. They thought it meant, I'll be here when you're ready. But in reality, it was the calm before the disconnect, the quiet preparation before the cut. Here's the thing about emotionally avoidant people. They don't expect consequences. They expect patterns. They assume that if you tolerated the push-pull before, you'll keep tolerating it now, that you'll keep dancing around their intimacy issues, keep loving them through their confusion, because that's what you used to do. But then, you switched. Not with a speech, not with a fight. You just stopped replying the same way, stopped defending yourself, stopped caring about whether they understood your worth. And that's when it hit them. They didn't just lose your affection, they lost your access. In psychology, it's called reverse pursuit. The moment you pull away, not as a tactic, but as a truth, the person who expected you to cling gets confused. Their entire sense of superiority starts to shake. Because they didn't think you had it in you. They thought you'd linger, orbit, wait, But you didn't. You walked. And here's what that says without ever needing to be said. I'm not competing for your clarity. I'm not performing for your love. I don't fear losing you because I've already found myself. They mistook your calm for weakness, but calm is just controlled power. And when you stopped showing up like a loyal follower, when you stopped letting their chaos direct your peace, they finally saw it. You weren't compliant. You were composed. And now, you're gone. Let that sink in. Then get ready. Because reason 2 is about to expose the one thing avoidance can't unsee once you disappear. Reason 2. They saw you move on. Without needing to prove anything. Avoidants are addicted to emotional superiority. They need to feel like the one who cared less, the one who ended it on their terms, the one who walked away stronger, colder, less affected. And at first, they convince themselves it's true. They scroll past your socials without liking anything. They go silent. They post random healing-era quotes or thirst traps, not for peace, but for attention. Meanwhile, you're quiet. Not posting, not ranting, not proving, just evolving. And then, out of nowhere, they check in, not directly, but through that sneaky story view, that anonymous "who's watching me now" urge. And what do they see? Nothing. No glow-up selfie parade, no rebound, no sad captions begging to be interpreted, just stillness. You weren't trying to win the breakup, you were actually healing. That's when panic sets in, because in the avoidant mind, love is a power game, and to them, detachment only has value if it's performative. So when you don't try to prove how great you're doing, when your silence isn't loud, just genuine, they feel something they weren't prepared for: irrelevance. They realize, wait, they didn't just move on, they moved up, and they didn't even need me to see it. Let's get real. Most people move on out of ego. They post cryptic captions, they hook up, they force a smile in every picture, just to say, look, I'm better off. But you went underground, you disappeared, not out of pain, but purpose. Because real healing doesn't ask to be witnessed. It doesn't broadcast itself. It doesn't beg for likes or reactions. It just happens. And avoidants don't know how to handle that. Because now they're the one watching. They're the one wondering. They're the one chasing emotional clarity, while you've already found yours. The philosopher Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." That's exactly what you did. You stopped trying to control how they viewed you, stopped performing pain or progress for their attention. And in that freedom, you became someone they can't access, not because you blocked them, but because you outgrew needing to be seen by them. And that is a death blow to an avoidance ego. They expected a show, but you gave them silence. They expected to be the final chapter, but you made them a footnote. They can't believe it, because you didn't just move on. You moved inward, and while they're still checking for proof of your pain, you're building peace they'll never get to experience. Stay ready. Reason 3 is about to break down the one emotional shift that turned their confusion into full-blown regret. Reason 3, you became emotionally unreachable without saying a word. Here's the truth. Avoidants don't fear abandonment. They fear accountability. They fear being seen, being exposed, being asked to show up in ways they've spent a lifetime avoiding. So what do? They leave first. They ghost. They push you away just to feel in control of when the connection ends. But here's the twist. They always expect a comeback, a text, a reach out, a subtle attempt to reconnect, even weeks or months later. Because in their mind, you're still emotionally tethered, still wondering, still available. So when you didn't reach back out, when you didn't post a reaction, send a paragraph, or start some back-and-forth closure convo, You triggered something they never prepared for, your emotional inaccessibility. They can't handle it. Because now they feel the disconnection. Not you. Not the one they thought would spiral. Them. For the first time, they're outside the walls you built. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know how you feel. They don't even know if they still matter. And the worst part? You didn't block them. You didn't threaten them. You didn't throw a digital tantrum. You just withdrew your spirit. And suddenly you weren't mad. You were missing. This is what separates emotional detachment from emotional manipulation. You didn't pull away to punish them. You pulled away to protect you. Because you realized, I can't keep giving access to someone who only shows up when it's convenient. I'm not a placeholder. I'm a whole person. If they can't handle intimacy, they don't deserve proximity. So you stopped over-explaining, stopped trying to fix it, stopped hoping they'd finally get it, and in doing that, you created the one thing avoidance can't penetrate. Boundaries. Not the kind you say, the kind you live. Here's what makes this unbearable for them. They want emotional access without emotional responsibility. They want to be able to pop in and out of your life, test the waters, get reassurance that the door's still open. But when you stop giving reactions, stop giving updates, stop needing anything from them, you remove the game board completely, and suddenly they're left with the one thing they've been running from the entire time, their own emptiness. Carl Jung said it best. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That's what you force them to do, not by yelling, not by blocking, not by playing mind games, just by healing in silence, by becoming the one thing they can't decode, can't guilt-trip, can't control. Unavailable. So now they scroll your page looking for signals. They check your name in their DM list. They wait for the pattern to return. But it doesn't. Because this time, you didn't go no contact. You became no contact, not as a strategy, but as a standard. And now, they can't reach you. Not because you're being cruel, but because you finally stopped being reachable to chaos. Brace yourself. Reason 4 is coming next. And it holds the secret mantra that will pin this entire transformation in place. Reason 4, you made peace with the pain, and that made you untouchable. Here's the part they never saw coming. It wasn't the silence, it wasn't the glow-up, it wasn't even your emotional distance. It was the fact that you faced the pain, sat in it, bled through it, felt every inch of the heartbreak, and didn't run from it. And that made you dangerous. Because the person who's not afraid to sit with pain is the person who can no longer be manipulated by it. See, avoidance operate off one assumption, that you'll do anything to avoid emotional pain. That discomfort will break you. That loneliness will drive you right back into their arms, or anyone's arms. That the silence will scare you into reaching out. That the heartbreak will force you into seeking closure, reassurance, or just one last hit of connection. But when you didn't do that, when you didn't run to the apps, didn't drunk text them at 2 a.m., didn't go looking for temporary warmth just to escape the cold, they realized something truly terrifying. You already went through the fire, and you came out cleaner. You accepted the loss. You accepted that they weren't capable of showing up for the version of you that actually needed something real. You stopped trying to rewrite the ending. You stopped replaying the past. You stopped needing them to understand what they broke. You did what 99% of people are too scared to do. You grieved, fully, alone, without shortcuts. And that level of emotional endurance, it changed everything. Here's what avoidance don't get. You didn't let go because you stopped caring. You let go because you finally cared about yourself more. You built a new standard, one they don't meet. And now, they're not blocked. They're just not qualified. There's a quote from Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's what you did. You couldn't change them. You couldn't force them to grow. You couldn't beg them into consistency. So you changed you. You let the pain do its job, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you. And that version of you, that quiet, composed, self-respecting version, is untouchable. Not because you're cold, but because you've seen the inside of heartbreak and made peace with it. That's what leaves your avoidant ex stunned, because they expected to haunt you. But all they did was awaken you. They thought they'd live in your head forever. Now they realize you live rent-free in theirs. And now it's time. Drop this secret mantra in the comments right now. I faced the pain. Now I own the peace. Let that be your flag in the ground, your turning point, your reminder that emotional resilience isn't just powerful, it's magnetic. First person to comment that mantra, I'll pin it myself. And if you felt this episode, hit that like button, share it with someone healing in silence, subscribe and turn on notifications for the final week of Volume 4. Join the channel membership, links in the description. This isn't about revenge. It's not about showing them what they lost. It's about showing yourself what you finally found. Peace, power, and a version of you they'll never have access to again. Let that sink in. Now, go be the storm they never saw coming. And there it is, 4 brutal truths that hit harder than closure ever could. They didn't expect you to walk away like that, not gracefully, not quietly, not without drama, but you did. You detached without screaming, you healed without announcing, you transformed without asking for applause. And that's the kind of power no avoidant ex knows how to process, because it's the one thing they never imagined you'd reclaim, your peace. They expected to be the chapter you'd always reread, the wound you'd never close, the person you'd always wonder about. But now, they're not even part of your plot anymore, because you've stopped reading the story and started writing the next one. Let this episode be your line in the sand, because the old version of you, the one who over-explained, who fought to be seen, who begged for breadcrumbs, dead, gone, buried under the strength you earned in silence. If this hit deep, here's your mission. Like this video if you've detached with class. Share it with someone who needs to remember who the hell they are. Subscribe so you don't miss the final week of Volume 4, because we're about to expose the moment the avoidance spirals for good. And if you want to dive deeper, if you're ready to go beyond the algorithm and join the real inner circle, join the channel membership, links in the description, bonus videos, private drops, raw game, no filters. And finally, if you haven't already, drop that mantra from Reason 4 in the comments. I face the pain, now I own the peace. Let it echo, let it land, let them watch you rise in silence. Because now, you're not chasing love, you are the closure. See you in the next episode, and until then, detach with dignity, move with purpose, and never apologize for healing in peace.